Cover me.
We also recognize, just as it has been in the United States for Jamaica, one of the issues that has been presented as an issue that is economic in the way of its impact has been the pandemic. So to that end, we are announcing today also that we will assist Jamaica in COVID recovery by assisting in terms of the recovery efforts in Jamaica that have been essential to, I believe, what is necessary to strengthen not only the issue of public health, but also the economy.
Друзья, спасибо вам огромное за поддержку, которая сейчас так нужна и Донбассу, и нашим вооруженным силам.
Маски сброшены. Мы защищаем интересы нашей страны, нашей великой России. Мы поддерживаем нашего президента, нашего верховного главнокомандующего.
8 лет идет война. 8 лет. Убивают детей, убивают женщин. 8 лет весь мир закрывает на это глаза. Нужно единство, нужно сплотиться. Но самое главное, нужна наша поддержка нашей армии. Мы вместе с президентом, мы вместе с нашей великой армией.
The live stream got shut down just like that, in the middle, right? So I started calling him Bagpipes, because that's what his Italian name, and that's what it means.
The AI must be pretty good, you know, or maybe you have your own minder that watches your videos, you know, from some you know, office park in Bangalore, India. You know,
I don't know. I used to have someone who moderated the chat. He hasn't been around lately, but I've rather, you know, trained the people on my chat, you know, not to say stupid things that are going to, you know, get me in trouble. Of course, you know, Luke Ford, he used to complain about the strikes he got from YouTube, and I said, why do you have Nazis on your show? But I'm disagreeing with them. You're not getting it, Luke. Why are you putting Nazis on your show?
What kind of Nazis?
What kind of American Nazis? You know,
like people that would come on and say, "Hello, I'm a Nazi," and
well, there was this guy. What was his name? Patrick. Was it Patrick Casey or someone who was running for senator or whatever, and he actually believed that the message of National Socialism was just going to sweep America.
Well, I'm just the FYI, I decided to start recording since we're already jumping into this. First and foremost, I need to make a little bit of an announcement, and I am aware of this, but Expat Aftermath is not. We are actually on our, we got 2 community guideline strikes, and this will be our last show we'll be doing for the foreseeable future. I want both strikes to be cleared before we start creating any more content. You guys can go to the BitChute channel in the meantime. May do a few oddball shows here and there, upload some old content from a few years ago. But we need to take a break. I mentioned that in the previous live stream that me and IAM did. And the amount of information getting thrown at us, whether it's the ongoing scamdemic, the war in Ukraine. The information is too much for me to really digest and understand what's going on. And I don't want to give out the wrong information. I don't want to sound ignorant. So I definitely want to take a step back, read some books, try to get some new information, some fresh material going, and reach out to some new guests. So that is just a little quick announcement to all of our listeners. And tonight we have someone who is actually quite, I don't want to say near and dear to me, but Kevin Michael Grace is on the KMG show. And I first and foremost want to thank you, Kevin, for joining us. And I want to thank you for doing shows every weekday on time and providing really good content and information and entertainment for me and for some of my friends. You've in some weird way kind of helped guide me through the ongoing situation that we're all experiencing in the West. I really truly mean that. It's been a lot of fun listening to you.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate it. You know, it's funny doing this. Well, I'd say 5 days a week. I often take Monday off. It just reminds me when I was a talk radio producer. I don't know whether you know SCTV, but, you know, Bob and Doug McKenzie, you know, topics. We need a topic for today. And you're a talk radio producer. You become obsessed with topics. You need new topics, right? And it got to the point where, you know, if I had found out on, say, Monday afternoon or Monday evening that an asteroid was going to destroy the world on Wednesday, my first thought would be, oh man, now I have to completely redo Tuesday's show. Because, you know, what with the asteroid destroying all life on Earth on Wednesday? Yeah, you know, when I first started doing this, you know, I just explained that I was on Luke Fort's live stream for a year and a half, something like that. And then he fired me like 2 years ago. I guess he thought that I'd taken over his show. You know, he asked me to, you know, provide topics, right? Which I did, you know, with links and all this stuff. And I guess he felt that I did, you know, stolen his show, or that he didn't like he found the structure constricting, you know. But when I started this a little over 2 years ago, the prospect of speaking like nonstop for 2 hours a day, that was really daunting. But it's kind of amazing and really rather frightening just how facile I have become at this. Just my ability to just blather on for 2 hours at a time, you know, about anything.
No,
Well,
it's
you do great with it,
fantastic.
yeah.
I really, you know, I introduced you to my mom. I introduced you to my brother. They all seem to, both of them enjoy you a lot. I even just recently, you were talking a little bit about music and movies. You have the book reviews. You did Christopher Lash, who's a big inspiration of mine, and I derive a lot of my information for content creation from most of his books, if not all of his books. And, you know, you're talking about the Kinks, Roxy Music, Brian Eno. You mentioned something about the Clash that I thought I was the only person that knew that about the band.
What was that?
I think it was about Mick Jones in particular, about his upbringing. He was raised by a single mother. He was also Jewish. And a little bit of a feud between Joe Strummer and Mick Jones. And Joe Strummer's upbringing was actually quite, you know, his father was a diplomat. His mother was, I think his father was Scottish. His mother was, his father was Turkish. His mother was Scottish. And he had a very nice upbringing, and he went to the same school as Peter Gabriel. It was something to that effect. It was like,
well, no, he went to the Haberdasher's Ask in London. Peter Gabriel, I believe, went to Shrewsbury, rather posher school. All of the members of Genesis except Collins went to this posh private school. A confusing story about Peter Gabriel that in, I don't know, around 1975 or whatever, this meme started that, oh, you know, posh people don't belong in rock and roll. And so he was being attacked in the music papers. And so he started writing letters to like Melody Maker and the New Musical Express, attacking himself. He thought this was so funny. Of course, Mick Jones was in a band that never played a concert, but a whole bunch of famous people were in, called the London SS.
Yep.
And this gives you an idea of just how different the 1970s were, that, you know, Mick Jones, who's half Jewish, didn't, oh yeah, London SS, that sounds cool, right?
Yeah, it's a great debate on whose band it really was. Topper Heaton, the drummer, says it was Mick's band, but Joe was 5 years older than the rest of them, so they all kind of looked up to Joe.
Yeah, if you look at the songs that Mick was contributing, they tended to be kind of gloopy, you know, what Stay Free and Should I Stay or Should I Go, you know? Yes,
that's correct. I can't believe you know this type of stuff. And the amount of knowledge you have, whether it's, I'm assuming it's because of your age and you're always into these type of things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, like, how did you start the KMG show? Like, where did this all come from? Where does it stem from?
Hang on, just give me a second here.
Sure.
I've just got to get something here. I'll be back in about 10 seconds, okay?
Yeah, no problem. It's funny, he mentioned the song Stay Free, and that is a very cheesy Clash song and not one of my favorites. That song's really lame. I like Mick Jones as a guitar player. He considered himself an average guitar player, but when he performed on live, it was like sloppy, but it sounded kind of cool. You know, like you wouldn't be able to replicate what he had played if you wanted to. So like when I would go to my guitar teacher saying, hey, I want to play this riff, my guitar teacher would say, it's out of tune. It's very sloppy.
He didn't want to teach it to you.
Yeah, he didn't even want to teach it to me.
Shitty, man.
So you're asking me about the KMG show?
Yes.
Well, for some reason, and I'm trying to remember what year this was, I guess it was like 4 years ago, Luke Ford, I was living in Creston, BC, which is a strange story in itself, but we'll get into that. I was there for 6 months or something. I was, my Babylonian exile. So I got the invite from Luke Ford to be on his show. And then he started asking me more and more and more, such that it became a regular thing. And then, as I say, at the beginning of 2020, he fired me, right? And so I thought, it seemed to me that I built up an audience. Now, he used to do this blood sports thing, right? I don't need to explain to you what that means. I'm actually rather a timorous person in person. And in order to get into this whole blood sports thing, I used to have to get really drunk. It's the only way I could do it. And so there's all these clips of, deranged drunk KMG around, right? And a lot of people found that hilarious, but I have to confess, it really took a lot out of me.
Right.
Because it seemed to me that, I'm not that good of an actor, that you really have to feel this in order to, to express that degree of venom, right? And I know a lot of people, like this guy, this Vox Day illustrator, maybe you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
DDR respecter, right?
Yeah.
He, we missed drunk KMG, and I'm thinking, well, you may have, maybe on Christmas Day or my birthday or whatever, but no, I stay away from that now.
New Year's Eve, maybe.
But no, when I started the KMG show, I let everyone know this is going to be my good taste show. Okay. Because, Luke Ford was always talking about pornography. And I told him, look, man, you should stop doing this. It's limiting your audience. Because there's two kinds of people in the world. There's the kind of people who love hearing about pornography and the other kind of people who hate hearing about it. And the first category is very small. That's a very niche audience.
What kind of topics did he discuss about pornography? Was he trying to break down, how negative it was, or?
Well, no, I mean, he talked about, having a sex addiction himself.
Oh, okay.
And how he had, beaten that. But he used to just tell all these war stories about writing about pornography, getting into feuds with pornography producers, these rather cringe stories about his own experiences with porn actresses,
That was kind of his career for a while. I mean, that's what he did. But he wrote about the porn industry. But yeah, I didn't like it when he talked about it on the show. And also, he had these other odd traits. Like he at one point for a few months he would play like the didgeridoo at random intervals while you were talking.
Yeah.
And like literally nobody wanted to hear that. And he just kept doing it. And then he also had this thing where he would play clips from like John Mearsheimer or whatever at like double speed for 20 minutes at a time or something. I mean, just
I got the impression that the show was boring him because what he would do, like on Mondays, he'd watch Monday Night Football, right? Well, he was doing the show. At one show, I was getting the audio feed from Monday Night Football coming into my ear at excruciating volume.
Wow.
He doesn't have that big of a following anymore. I mean, our show's bigger than him, and he's been at it for a really long time. In fact, he interviewed Andy Nowicki. I don't know if you're familiar with Andy Nowicki.
I know of him.
And Andy's a really probably our most popular guest on our show. He comes on every like 2 or 3 months. He comes on, and in fact, he's my editor for my articles, for at least half the articles, not all of them. Some of them I self-edited, which may be apparent to a few of you listeners out there. But yeah, he was very disrespectful to Andy, and Andy had written a new book called entitled "The Insurrectionist." He was promoting it, going on various podcasts and other live streams. And Luke was just very condescending. Like, where do you get your information from? Do you have facts for that? Where's your reference? And just kept going at it with him. And I don't know whether it was Luke just trying to garnish some type of feud to get more viewers, more people to listen in. But he's not popular. He seems to be very dry. I followed him a couple times, subscribed and unsubscribed, but not really my cup of tea.
Well, I remember I was talking, maybe I was reviewing a documentary by Adam Curtis, the English documentarian.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke starts asking me about his academic credentials.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost lost it. I almost started yelling at him. Oh, so you have to have a university degree or a postgraduate degree for anyone to take you seriously? George Orwell didn't even have a bachelor's degree, right?
Really?
And then I found out that Adam Curtis, yes, does have a university degree, and I think he was in a PhD program or something, which he abandoned, but I just, this weird credentialism,
Experts.
Yes, experts.
Well, that's we've seen a lot of that in the last 2 years. A complete appeal to authority by so many people, especially when it's come to. Are we allowed to talk about that, Nick?
Just don't. Remember, Fauci in Italian means jawbone. So if we're going to refer to the elixir, refer to as jawboned.
The jawbone elixir.
Jawbone elixir.
Yeah.
And as far as and we'll just call it the scamdemic, or as KMG likes to call it, the sanitary dictatorship.
The sanitary.
That is
That's
actually that's not my coinage. It's from a
Okay.
Catholic bishop called Athanasius Schneider,
Mm.
who is a Kazakhstan. He's a bishop of Kazakhstan. He's a really fascinating man. Like, he grew up in he ended up in Estonia, and he had to attend church secretly for all these years because it was banned. But the website I'm not supposed to mention outside of the website, calls it Dr. Fauci's miracle seed.
Well, that's what I mean is like what's been happening. I mean, referencing your friend who was bored with his show. This an extreme appeal to authority I've seen happen among people, to the point where it's like, I only know what's going on around me if someone who is a figure of authority that I can put my trust in tells me what's happening. Other than that, I have no opinion on my own. It's very bizarre, man.
Yeah, but what's even more bizarre than that is that somehow journalists are authorities now. That I was a journalist for many years, okay, and I worked for a weekly magazine, which became a fortnightly magazine. Essentially, in this game, they tell you you have 1 week to bone up on this subject and then write about it, okay? Because I've had the experience over the years. There are these sites that collect published articles, and they sell them, right? And so I'll come across some piece that I wrote, 20 years ago, and I thought, I actually knew things about this subject. I actually had opinions about this subject. Really? Because these journalists, oh yeah, these people doing their own research. That's exactly what journalists do, is do their own research.
Well, no, not anymore.
No, they just paraphrase press releases is what they do.
Yeah. They used to do their own research. That was kind of what journalism used to be, but not anymore.
I want to bring something up, and this kind of ties into the whole expert aspect of the topic. So I recently relocated from New York, Long Island. My listeners know I'm from the tri-state region, and I moved down south. And I noticed how many people, business owners and upper management, have to defer responsibility to an expert. And it's become quite annoying because for example, like a legal document. Okay, so you read the legal document. Okay, you comprehend it. You read the words, but you're not allowed to basically regurgitate what that legal document says to a client or a customer because you're not an attorney. Now, where I'm from in New York and working in New York City, if you had to keep deferring to experts and people and others that are skilled in a specific area, they would think you're mentally retarded. Like, I don't need to go to a third party to comprehend what I'm being told. If we can all agree upon what is in front of us right here, correct? But no,
there are certain legal restrictions in certain industries. For instance, I got back into journalism about a decade ago, and I started writing about the mining industry, and then the gas industry, and oil industry. I knew nothing about it, and I had to learn right from the very beginning, from zero knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And I found out, to give you an example, well, in Canada, most of the mining stocks were listed on the Vancouver Stock Exchange, which is notoriously corrupt. And there was this scandal in the 90s, this company called Bre-X, which had found like the world's biggest gold deposit in Indonesia. And the stock went from like $3 to $150 and just kept climbing. And then it went down to zero because it turned out it was all fake, right?
Right.
So then the very stringent requirements were placed on mining companies in Canada, and it's all been moved to the Toronto Stock Exchange. And one of the requirements is that any press releases which are released by a mining company have to be lawyered.
Right.
And no one who is not, lawyered up can represent the company in a press release. Any communication from the company needs to be vetted by lawyers.
Right.
So that's one explanation, perhaps, for what you're describing.
It could, and I'm just using that as like a microcosm of just what I'm dealing with, like perhaps a car breaking down. I can service the car myself, but wait, hold on, you can't handle that. You need to go to this person. Just we've kind of killed off the Renaissance man, as I like to call it. Like, you kind of know a little about a lot, and we've kind of like narrowed everything down to being super skilled in one aspect of your life, and that's it. So, when you keep talking about experts, I've kind of dealt with that in my own work or whatever.
I was rewatching this HBO show called Silicon Valley, which I love. And this guy, Peter Gregory, who's on the first season, and then he sadly died before 50. He's talking, he announced this, this fund in effect to pay people not to go to university, because he mentioned all of the giants of the personal computer industry, and almost none of them have university degrees, right? Bill Gates doesn't have a university degree. He dropped out of Harvard in the first year, right? Steve Jobs doesn't have a university degree, and on and on and on. There was this great tradition in America, the tradition of the tinkerer, right? You have the Wright brothers with their bicycle shop, and they're interested in flight, and in their garage, they build the first heavier than air plane,
I had a one of my best friends. We were at a party and he showed up like an hour and a half late, and he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I got a flat tire." And well, it took you an hour and a half to change a flat. He goes, "No, I had to call AAA to change my my flat." And the other group of friends were like laughing, like, "Yeah, you called it, like you're joking, right?" And he was dead serious. And mind you, he has a master's degree from Columbia.
He couldn't change a tire.
Couldn't change a tire, but spent $150,000 on a higher education. And that's kind of what I was leading towards about this whole, appealing to authority kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Well, no, but what is the basis of their authority, right?
Yeah.
Like this fellow who is the head of Pfizer, he's a veterinarian by profession, a veterinarian, right?
Yeah.
Animal bodies, not human bodies. I just,
well, think about, you mentioned Bill Gates. That man might have invented Microsoft, maybe not, but now he is a health professional.
Yes. He doesn't even have a bachelor's degree, has no medical training, et cetera, et cetera. It used to be, I had a lot of respect for Bill Gates, because to do what he did, to drop out of Harvard and go to Albuquerque, New Mexico. This was before Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. This was like the end of the earth to work on the Altair computer. That was a really gutsy move, because I'll tell you, I don't know whether you know this about Bill Gates. He's William Henry Gates III, right?
Yeah.
But he's not William Henry Gates III. He's William Henry Gates IV. What happened is his father was an American soldier in World War II. And yeah, what's your name? And he thought, William Henry Gates III. Like, I'm going to get beaten up every day if they find out this is my name. So he changed his name to William H. Gates Jr., right? Junior. Yeah, we can live with that. But
that was his father or his grandfather?
His father.
His father, okay.
His father was William Henry Gates III, but he changed his name to Junior because, when he joined the army, because he didn't want to be beaten up in the barracks every night.
And I think Mrs. Gates, Melinda Gates, her father or grandfather was on the Federal Reserve Board.
You mean Bill Gates' tranny wife?
Tranny wife, yeah.
Jesus.
And then obviously Bill Gates' father was also on the board of Planned Parenthood.
Well, no, it's just something about Bill Gates that, he's some nobody who somehow snookered IBM into buying his software, right?
Yeah, we don't.
This is documented. When IBM panicked and decided to, go to outsiders for their personal computer, which is unheard of in the IBM culture, they interviewed various people. And so Bill Gates, he bought this company in Seattle, this DOS company. He ended up paying, I think, $6,000 for something which made him billions of dollars. He's an excellent businessman, if nothing else. Anyway, so after Bill Gates and his fledgling company, Microsoft, make this proposal to IBM, one of the IBM executives says, "That's Mary Gates' son, isn't it?" Because the Gateses were very important socially in Seattle, and Mary Gates was the head of the local United Way, I think.
They had their ties in Planned Parenthood, the beginnings of Planned Parenthood. Both his mom and his dad.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, Gates was married in a Catholic ceremony to his wife, right?
To his husband.
Well, okay.
That's a
I-
man.
I've seen Bill Gates interviewed about the subject of religion, and his idea, this typical nerd autistic view, is like, okay, that's an hour of my Sunday gone, and there's a travel time too, and the travel time from, and I could be so much more efficient during that time. That's how you look at it, really? That you got to maximize your utility 24/7?
Hey, do you know if it's a fact or is it just kind of a bit of a conspiracy that he's a wanted criminal in India?
Well, he
I
did get
don't-
booted out. His foundation did get booted out of India for pushing. I think it was for what is the vaccine for the girls?
HPV.
HPV? Yeah, HPV. Right. There was an HPV vaccine that they pushed in India for mostly for girls. I think the HPV was specifically only for girls at the time. Now they'll give it to boys, but there was so much damage to so many of these girls, infertility, paralyzed, different kind of neurological disorders, that the Indian government fucking ran them out of the country.
They're sensitive about this in India. Indira Gandhi was notorious for many things, but one of which was her mania for birth control. So she wanted to have as many men in India sterilized as possible, right? And so they went to the villages, these primitive villages, and say, yeah, we're going to do something good for you, okay, which is going to improve your health. Yeah, okay, what is it? They didn't understand what it was, right?
No.
And if you do this, we'll give you a transistor radio. Wow, a transistor radio. Millions of Indian men were sterilized, and then later, what? What did they do to me? What?
Well, here just a few years ago, they gave people a hamburger to get a shot.
Dunkin' Donuts, free donut.
A donut,
And,
$100,
free
hamburger.
marijuana.
Yeah.
Again, informed consent. If you have to bribe people to do this, I mean, come on, really. Okay, so there's this terrible thing going around, and here's the vaccine, which is 100% efficacious and 100% safe. Why do you need to bribe people and to bully people into getting it?
Yeah. Well, then I made that argument many, many times to people in my circles, right? And again, I think it fell on deaf ears because of this real blind appeal to authority. People have a very, very hard time forming their own opinions. It's very hard to approach them with common sense. Just throwing at them tidbits here and there to allow them to exercise critical thinking. It's very, very difficult.
No, but I don't, okay, I suppose I understand, okay? It's a lack of what the historian John Lukács called historical consciousness. Let's talk about conspiracy theories. Have you ever heard of the USS Maine, and the destruction of the Maine and how that led America into the Spanish-American War, right?
I don't know too much.
Or the sinking of the
Maine, hell with Spain.
Yeah, and the sinking of the Lusitania and the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which FDR knew about well in advance. And this poor Kimmel and Short got it in the neck for it. They took the blame for it.
What's the big one? The American ship that Israelis sank, the Liberty?
The Liberty, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but how about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution?
Mm-hmm.
Because Admiral James Stockdale, who won the Medal of Honor, he spent 6 years, being tortured in, the Hanoi Hilton. He was there, okay? And he said, there weren't any North Vietnamese there. They were just bombing black water, right? And this is how, America formally got into Vietnam. Oh, let's talk about MK Ultra. That turned out to be real, right? The CIA giving people force feeding, in Montreal, McGill University. Let's give people a whole bunch of LSD and see what happens to them. Yeah, guess what? They ended up broken, right? Mm-hmm. Or how about weapons of mass destruction? Okay, completely made up. But, oh, no, you don't want to be a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. And I think Go ahead. Go ahead. Nick.
It's weird because when you try having I want to say like an adult conversation with someone about, whatever is the topic at B, whether it's current events or whatever. As soon as someone says, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory," it's like it's a stop. Like the conversation cannot proceed any further as soon as someone drops the word conspiracy theory on you. It's like, oh, well, I guess we can't have this conversation anymore.
I learned recently that more than half of all federal indictments in the United States are for the crime of, wait for it, conspiracy.
Oh, yeah. That's not surprising. Well, and another thing I think too is, I don't know, now we're kind of talking about how people are reacting to these events. We talked a little bit about an authority, the image or the idea of an authority. They say it must be true, but there's also that sort of overwhelming appeal to consensus as well. Like everybody wants to be a part of the perceived consensus. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to be seen. Very few people want to step outside of that.
Yeah, but a lot of people think they are stepping outside. So many of these people who fell, for the whole sanitary dictatorship, they consider themselves to be independent, or as they love to say, critical thinkers, right?
How?
When I see these people, it's my estimate that about 20% of the population of North America has been broken.
Yeah,
by COVID-19. I live in Victoria, which, as you know, is a very windy city, right? Mm-hmm. I walk out onto the streets now, and the mask mandate is over finally. The vaccine passport mandate expired on Friday of this week. Mm-hmm. And, well, that would be yesterday. And I see about 20% of people outside, mostly alone, wearing masks. And I thought, oh, you believe in science, right? Do you have any idea how vast the atmosphere is? Hey, have you ever seen anyone smoking a cigarette? That an enormous amount of smoke comes out of their mouth and then it dissipates almost immediately. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, I guess in that sense, I wouldn't be able to tell unless I went and picked their brains. And I don't have the balls to walk up to somebody and go, "Hey man, why are you wearing that mask still?"
I do. I can do it.
Do you?
I have felt that over and over again. Just this fury. What the hell is wrong with you? Or I see the other day, just a few days ago, I saw this guy, and he's in like an $80,000 BMW with hip hop music at about 100 decibels pouring out of the car. He's alone in the car, and he's wearing a mask.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What is wrong with you? Or I see these women, mothers, that they've got a baby in the seat in the back, and the mother's wearing a mask, right? And I'm thinking, are you gonna keep this up with the baby?
Yeah, how
long? Good luck. You're gonna have some sort of Rube Goldberg machine to feed the baby, like an enormous spoon. But then I was thinking, and then changing diapers, I couldn't think of a workaround besides getting really close to the baby,
Mm-hmm.
Well, was it you that was a while ago making fun of men with neck tattoos wearing the mouth diaper? I think it was you. He's like, yeah, you look real tough with that mask on and that neck tattoo.
No, the neck tattoo, the popularity of this kind of took me by surprise.
Yes.
There's this Scottish writer, Armando Iannucci, who I'm very, very fond of. And he did The Thick of It in Britain and Veep in the United States. And so there's an episode of this show where the Veep, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, might be pregnant. She thinks she might be pregnant. So she sends her chief aide to a drugstore to buy pregnancy tests. And her rival in the office sees her buying the pregnancy tests, and he thinks that they're for her, right? She's like the chief of staff or whatever for the office. And he says to her, like, pregnancy? You think that's a good career move? Like, why don't you get a neck tattoo or join Scientology? But oh no, again, this stuff, you know, I think it was in the late 1990s when I first saw a tramp stamp. Okay, I was in this restaurant in downtown Vancouver, and it was one of those restaurants where the waitresses were all like quite attractive, right? It's one of the reasons I like to go there. And so they all had these crop tops, right? And so when they would bend over, I would see like at the base of the spine, like this enormous tattoo, like eagle's wings or whatever. One woman did it, and then the other woman bent over. What's going on here, right? And then it was only a few years later that I heard this term tramp stamp, and I thought, why didn't someone tell me this before? Because this is just so perfect. And I remember talking about this with an editor from Chronicles magazine years ago. We were talking about the phenomenon of the tramp stamp, and he said, well, you know, maybe when a man is having sex with a woman, you know, like from behind, it gives him something to look at.
or a target.
Yeah, I don't know, man. And it's, you know, that is a topic that Lamprey and I have discussed before, is tattooed women. Just as a side note, anyway.
Well, no, but I mean, it used to be, again, this was aposematic, right? You see a woman with tattoos and you think, nope, nope, staying away from this. The same way with the navel piercing, right? Nope, staying away from that. But these have now become so ubiquitous that they're not really signifiers anymore.
Well, we didn't mention this to you, Mr. Grace, but between me, and Expat Aftermath, we have about 25 years combined experience living in Asia, Far Asia. So when I lived in Cambodia for 4.5 years, and Cambodia tattoos are very taboo. It's very, basically, it's only like criminals that have them, and
criminals and whores, yeah.
And whores. So the whores would have a visible tattoo on their hand or on their neck. And in Thailand, it's the same. It's either a very visible tattoo, usually on their hands or like on their fingers or on their neck. So, you know, coming back to the United States and you see this explosion of visible tattoos, I kind of got a notion in my head that they're usually very loose.
Yeah, but you see here with the tattoo explosion in the United States, even amongst people that you might call normal, the influence of criminal culture and porn, that tattoos were associated for the well with sailors, say, or with people in the military. Some Marine, you know, would get Semper Fi or whatever, put on his arm, right? But apart from that, apart from the military aspect, it was prisoners, okay? This was an example of them being degraded, like the shaved head, right? When the shaved head became popular, I thought, you know, this is universally associated throughout history with degradation, right? And then through the porn industry, because the influence of the porn industry on American culture is absolutely huge. That all of these women, oh yes, I'm gender liquid. Oh yeah, you don't want to be a boring heterosexual woman, right? You see the influence of the porn industry, because in the porn industry, the women, well, they have to have sex, homosexual sex, right? Because if they don't, well, like, what's wrong with you, right? So, well, yeah, of course, yeah, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get tattooed all over my body. I don't know. Again, I'm showing off my old man cred here. But like going back to the 90s, I remember being in a bookstore in Edmonton where I mentioned I used to live. And there was this beautiful young woman. I don't know, maybe she was around 25. And she was kind of hippie-ish, you know, with her hair and wearing this sort of hippie dress. And I noticed she had a very large tattoo on her arm. And I wanted to go up to her and say, you're a beautiful woman. Why would you degrade yourself in this way?
You should have.
No, but again, you know, another thing I want to say is, do you know, unless you're like a twin or a triplet or something, you are unique. There was no one else in the world like you. Okay. So why do you want to make yourself look like everyone else?
Let me build upon this for a moment, because I've done a lot of research on the whole the whole tattoo thing. One is that it's a lot of these people have identity issues. So the less rooted they are in whatever their ethnicity is or their religion, the more likely they are to get tattoos. And the other thing is it's something that's permanent, because everything's so transient, and people come and go. The ebbs and flows of life are much more rapid, especially now, that if they get a tattoo, they can look at it and say, oh, I exist. I'm a real person. That actually happened to me.
That is so sad. That is so sad.
Well, yeah.
I've often reprinted this quotation from Christopher Lasch, going back to 1977, where he's talking about the effects of child-oriented raising, right? Oh, you put the child first, not the adults. And he said, going back to 1977, that the early results are not encouraging, because you see amongst the young people today this thirst for, authenticity and a need to fit into the peer group. And he gave many other examples. He said, characteristics we associate with citizens of totalitarian societies.
Another thing too, on top of that, related to the tattoo, that both Lamprey and myself discussed in the past, is that if a woman has a tattoo, it's a good sign that she has very little foresight capabilities, because it is permanent. And when you're 20 years old and you get this giant fucking tramp stamp, eventually you're going to get old and it's going to look like shit, and you're going to be, it's there. And so it signals to, I think it signals to me that they have very, very little foresight.
They have a limited time horizon.
Yeah.
No, but it's a sexual signifier.
Yeah.
All of these things which I mentioned, the list of them, and I'm sure I missed some of. They're sexual signifiers, and what do they signify? I will do it on the first date. Yeah. That's what they signify.
But that sexual signifying is only good. It's got an expiration date, and they don't realize that.
You'd think so, but I read recently, there are many stories that apparently there is an epidemic of venereal disease in people above the age of 60 and 70 now.
What, is just a bunch of geriatrics getting it on in the homes, or what?
Yeah, well, exactly.
What else are you going to do, man?
I don't know. I remember
Yell at the TV.
Yell at the TV.
I remember when Viagra came out, that one of the writers that worked for me at BC Report, he wrote this piece, and he referred to, I think it was Sir Richard Burton, The Anatomy of Melancholy, that Sir Richard Burton talks about, the time in a man's life where suddenly he's not being led around by his dick, and it's such a relief, It
is a wonderful relief. Absolutely. Well, you got to remember too, the state, going back to geriatric herpes, you got to remember that these people, have you ever seen the condition of a lot of these homes where these people live, and the lives they live? Like, a lot of them are kind of alone. They're not treated well.
No,
they're not fed well. So I think for a lot of them, it's probably just, might as well fuck.
My father died 2 years ago, well, of COVID, with COVID or whatever. He was 89 years old. Okay. And, what are you trying to kill, grandfather? He was demented, seriously demented, and like seriously ill. But I found, I did some research into this, and I found that the average longevity of people who go into these long-term assisted care facilities is 5 months. 5 months. Yeah. And that's exactly how long my father lasted.
Yeah.
And one of my brothers said, I'm not getting to that position. Okay. If I have to go to one of these places, and he knew, lots of people know how these old people are treated, typically by people who are, let's say, not of their own ethnic stock, that he said, I'm going to kill myself if it comes to that. That's what he told me.
Yeah.
Is in the Sopranos retirement community. It's not a nursing home.
Right.
Hey, I think this is where Vox Day derives the phrase "Day of the Pillow."
Day of the Pillow.
Yes.
Yeah, for the Filipino nurse that will suffocate the the boomer on his deathbed.
Jesus.
I know, dark stuff.
That's funny, Day of the Pillow. I used to talk about that a lot in 2016 with regard to Hillary Clinton, because she was such a disastrous candidate that I made up this joke, and it went on for months on my old podcast, Kevin Steele, that someone's going to slip into her bedroom and it's going to be the Day of the Pillow, right?
Oh my God.
Because you're running against Donald Trump, and this guy's negatives are off the scale, and yet you're losing to him. You're supposed to be, the adult in the room, as they say, right? But you're just so toxic that the only, Hillary fans, who are they? They're like cult members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's hilarious now because we've moved on from Hillary, that people, I can admit, she seems a pretty smart person.
Yeah.
Like, she's wrong about everything, but she seems pretty smart. Compare her to Kamala Harris with her insane cackling whenever she says anything.
Yeah, it seems like a lot. I mean, the most I know about these talking head politicians is what I see through social media. I'm not well versed in all that, but it just seems like as the years go on, they become more and more insane or out of touch. And I think maybe that's the image they're trying to give off to the people. I mean, it can't be an accident. It seems like it's a strange, bizarre role that these figureheads are playing. How can anybody look at Biden and take him seriously? It's so bizarre. It's like
but
a
he had
cartoon.
so much experience. You remember in 2016, one of the debates between Trump and Hillary, just Trump scored what James Burnham would have called a generic bullseye, that Hillary was always my experience, my experience, my experience. And Trump said, it's bad experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, it's like the scales just fell from my eyes.
He was so good at that kind of retort.
Well, he was an entertainer as well as a
Yeah.
businessman. So
What did you,
That's why
what
he
did you
won,
think?
right?
What did you all think of Trump before he got into politics?
Let me speak as the New Yorker first.
Yeah.
I thought he was very boorish. I remember him being very outspoken during 9/11 and what they planned on building, the Freedom Tower. A lot of New Yorkers really liked what Donald Trump had to say, is building the same exact thing but bigger, make it a little bit more glossy, kind of change up the aesthetics a little bit, but build the same thing but better. Don't let them win. Don't let them change what your identity is. And a lot of people, including people that survived the collapse, all agreed with him. And when Trump decided to run, I didn't forget that. I thought it was pretty cool when he described himself as a taxi driver Republican. I thought that was really cool because I know exactly what he was trying to convey using those, I understand the image, like the kind of the pissy, angry, working class kind of guy, high taxes and immigrants and, things of that effect. So I was really happy. And then I think within 3 or 4 months, I decided to get off the Trump chain because it seemed that he was going to do the opposite from what he was saying.
did he win in New York?
No, he lost heavily.
First
He lost
time
heavily.
in American history that happened.
Really?
Well, no, I asked this question because I know Trump going back a long, long way. I mean, I remember him being interviewed by David Letterman in the 1980s, right? And Letterman says, well, we hear you're going to run for president. And Donald Trump was, yeah, I don't know. And then he said, I want to make America great again. He said this is about 1985 on David Letterman's show. And Letterman says, to my mind, America is great, was great, always will be great, et cetera, et cetera. I did not like Donald Trump, okay? This boorishness and his crass taste and this stupid show, The Apprentice, where they get people who supposedly want to go into business to just humiliate themselves, these stupid tasks. And then, when he ran, I was suspicious. And then, I heard him speak. about domestic policy and foreign policy, particularly these speeches written by Stephen Miller, I thought, this is tremendous. I have never heard anything like this in my life from an American politician or any Western politician for that matter. Okay. This country is for us. It's not for foreigners, right? I thought, wow, that is so obvious, but no one says it, right?
Right. The United States has a history of entertainers as political leaders.
Well, you had Ronald Reagan, but okay, and you had George, what was his name? This other actor who became a senator from California. What's his name? George something or other.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Ugh,
You had Jesse Ventura, Al Franken. There's been a few other. That's that's kind of commonplace because people are familiar with the faces and stuff.
What about Zelensky?
Reagan had been pretty much out of the, well, Reagan made a remake of the classic film The Killers in 1964, and his version had John Cassavetes in it and Lee Marvin and Angie Dickinson. It's pretty good. It's directed by Don Siegel, who did Dirty Harry, and Ronald Reagan plays the evil mastermind, right? And he always said afterwards he regretted making this movie, but it's really good. Reagan had been, he was president of the Screen Actors Guild. He had a syndicated news column for years and years and years, right? And it really bothers me. I'm not a Reagan fanboy, okay? It really bothers me. Reagan is dumb, right? He's not dumb. He was not dumb. He graduated from an evangelical college, a university, in the 1930s, in Illinois or whatever. And, the educational standards there, I can guarantee you are higher than Harvard today, right? This is a guy who, when he was president of the United States, there was a book published by him against abortion, right? The president of the United States publishes a book while he's president, which is a series of arguments against abortion. And guess what? The media completely ignored the book. It was as if it had never happened. Because Reagan was governor of California. When he was governor, he completely eliminated all restrictions against abortion in California. And then later he felt guilty about it.
Right. And also, I think no fault divorce came.
That's right. During his term, that's absolutely right.
Do you want to get started on that? No fault divorce, which is like the worst thing that has happened in my lifetime. And I'm pretty old. Okay.
Oh yeah, man.
Well, before we get into that, I circling back to the whole Trump thing, do you think he was prepackaged to the masses? I personally,
no, I don't. No, I tell you, I'm not very good at making predictions, short-term predictions. But before, I was a Trump fanboy when he was running for president. After I learned his message, and back in my old podcast with Kevin Steele, I said, look, he's going to have a serious problem, which is the problem identified by James Burnham in his book, The Machiavellians. There is no alternative elite that is allowed to exist in the West, okay? So when Trump picks his aides and his cabinet ministers, he's going to have a serious problem, because it's not like he can go and say, yeah, these guys are solid. They're on our side, right? How do you know who's on your side, right? Because these people, we know of the stories of his staffers and cabinet ministers being hunted down, attacked at restaurants and the like, right? Being attacked in their homes. And these people all knew that if they worked for Reagan, they were not only risking their reputations, their careers, they might be risking their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't believe how all he did was pump the stock market. That's all he was focused on.
That's not true. That's not true. The wages of Americans rose significantly when Trump was president because of the almost immigration to the United States went from over 1 million to under 300,000. Okay. He pretty much shut off immigration, which raised Americans' wages. And of course, with Biden, oh no, we're going to have to open the borders because these stupid Americans who are nobodies are earning too much money.
I can tell you, while I was working in New York City, and I was surrounded by nothing but immigrants from all across the globe, they obviously did not like Trump, but it wasn't about his policies or anything. They didn't like the individual. They found him to be disrespectful to the office. They found him to be like he didn't act like a president. That really rubbed a lot of immigrants the wrong way. They found him to be undiplomatic. He wasn't polished and things like that.
He wasn't
But
Duterte
he got
enough.
Well, but Hispanics voted for him in record numbers, for a Republican president. I mean, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but Trump was wildly popular among a lot of Hispanics.
They like the big man.
They like the big man,
They like the big man. And you see in 2020, what he pretty much, doubled or more his support amongst black men, black women, who are the craziest people in America, right? Didn't do so well with them. But black men, they like this confidence, this swagger, right?
Yeah, I agree with KMG on this. Lamprey and I have kind of been over this many times. I deeply disagree with his view of Trump. I think Trump really went off the rails in his last year in office, I believe, with the onset of the coup and the sort of sanitary dictatorship that I think he foolishly allowed to be installed. And I don't let him off the hook for that.
No, if you go back to my shows from 2 years ago, when this warp speed thing was announced by Trump, I said, no, this is not a good idea.
Yep.
You do not want vaccines to be pushed through at warp speed. No, don't do this.
From an outsider, I noticed that, as soon as Jawbone, right? We know who Jawbone is. As soon as Jawbone came onto the scene, Dr. Jawbone, I used to see Trump on television with little Jawbone standing beside him talking about the scamdemic that was approaching. And Trump legitimately looked like a man who had been hoodwinked. That's the only way I can describe his face and his demeanor. He looked
I think he was hoodwinked. I know of Anthony Fauci, Jawbone, going back to the 1980s with AIDS. And AIDS was the test run for COVID-19. Because Anthony Fauci was saying, everyone's going to get AIDS. No, you're lying, okay? Who gets AIDS? Male homosexuals and IV drug users. And the sad people who got blood transfusions, like Howard Jarvis, Proposition 13, right? Mm-hmm. All these innocent people were killed because they got blood transfusions because, it would be like mean to stop homosexual men from donating blood, right?
Right.
And so this hysteria, and he was pushing AZT on everybody. Do you know about AZT?
Yeah, I know a guy that died from
Every single person who took AZT and didn't stop taking it died.
Yeah, it's very toxic.
AZT was developed in the 1970s as an anti-cancer drug, and it was abandoned because every single person who took it died.
Yeah.
And Fauci was pushing this down everyone's throats. He wanted pregnant women to be, even with no symptoms, to be given AZT. This guy is a maniac, and he's always been a maniac.
Yeah. So I guess, like you just said, maybe he was hoodwinked because Trump really looked, that's the image I got. If I remember back to all the times I would see him in the public speaking with Jawbone at his side as this whole COVID thing blew up, he really looked like someone who had just had the wool pulled over his eyes and he didn't realize it.
Well,
I think maybe, sorry to interrupt. I just think this is a doctor. And he is a highly acclaimed doctor. Yeah. And a doctor, of his status wouldn't make things up, right?
Right. It's classic boomerism. I mean, Trump, I mean.
No, you're absolutely right about that. Right? It is classic boomerism, although Trump's older than a boomer.
I think he's a boomer.
No, he's a silent or greatest generation.
Really? Yeah.
Well,
He's really old. Trump is
No,
what?
he's still
he's a boomer. He's a boomer because like my mother's a boomer and she's what 75.
Yeah, no, Trump was born in 1946, so
Yeah,
he's
he's
an older boomer. But the thing is, like, he trusted the absolute best, top authorities in the field, which in this case was Dr. Jawbone, even though, as we all know, he's a complete maniac. And I think, there's a writer named Jordan Schachtel who argued that basically the moment that Trump handed over, decision-making authority regarding the COOF to Fauci and Birx and all these people, then he lost the presidency.
It's maybe it's like growing up in the polio generation or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because Trump's attitude towards the military was, which we've heard in many reports, is, when was the last time you have won a war? Why should I listen to you?
Well, and that's what's so frustrating, because in other areas he recognized the fallacy of appealing to expertise. And there was that famous meeting he had with American generals where he said, look, you guys are a bunch of babies and idiots to their faces. I mean, imagine,
classic.
right? I mean, that's like an incredible thing to, like imagine Obama facing down, the Joint Chiefs of Staff and a room full of generals and calling them babies, right? He would never have the guts, and Trump did, but he didn't follow through on that.
I mean, look at what's the name of the general? I think he was the one behind the surge.
Petraeus.
And I don't know. I'm trying to remember the name of that guy. What was his name? Larry Austin. Do you remember him?
Lloyd. Well, there's Lloyd Austin now.
Maybe I've got his name wrong.
Mattis. There was
Mattis. He was a writer on the internet. He was this cranky old right-wing Jew.
Larry Ouster.
Larry Ouster. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, because I had some contact with him. I used to feed him some stuff. And then once I got upset with him, and like he set his clack off on me. Okay. His clack. He had this clack of admirers.
Oh,
okay.
And he said that Saddam Hussein was insane, right? And I said, no, he's not insane. He could be evil. He's not insane. Okay, because there's this tendency to conflate these two things, and they're not the same things. Okay. But the funny thing was that after he sent his clack at me, like a few months later, I contacted him again. It's like he'd completely forgotten it. It's like it had never happened, right?
He did that to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
He just like everybody eventually felt the wrath of Larry Ouster.
is there such thing as a right-wing Jew?
Oh, sure.
Well, he
There's lots of them.
converted. Didn't he convert to Catholicism?
Yes, he did on his deathbed. Yes.
Oh, that's interesting
Bobby
twist.
Fischer's another one. Well, he wasn't on his deathbed, bud.
Because he used to say exactly the same things about Pat Buchanan, about like the Jewish elite in the United States, exactly the same things. But when Pat Buchanan said them, Larry Austin would just tear him a new one, right? And I thought there's a certain lack of self-awareness here,
I remember John Derbyshire writing about Larry Ouster and basically saying, because he experienced the wrath of Larry Ouster, and Derbyshire said, yeah, look, it's just a normal thing. It happens to everyone. It's really not a big deal. Eventually, you're going to have a falling out with Larry Ouster.
He was, as I say, I had a fair amount of dealing with him, and I'm used to Jews being touchy, but this guy's touchiness was off the scale.
So digressing here, before we get into the meat of the topics, which is Ukraine, I want to ask you a little bit about cigarette smoking, because I'm a week now of not smoking any cigarettes, and now I've gotten into this habit of only smoking cigarettes on the weekends. But when I do buy a pack of cigarettes for doing live streams and such, or just, again, weekend, I smoke the whole pack now. Whereas if I had a pack on me, that would last me for about a week or so. And every time I'm trying to get some type of information about cigarette smokings and its consequences and such, it's always you're going to die, period. And last year I visited a pulmonary.
Yeah, but everyone's going to die.
I understand that. I remember on one of your shows you read my comment about cigarettes, and you had mentioned that there's little health adverse effects to smoking under 5 cigarettes a day in a lifetime. And you also, I'm assuming you're still a cigarette smoker, but you never smoke while doing live streams.
I can't. I would if I could, but it is almost illegal in this city to smoke indoors anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it would. I mean, I'll tell you something. You were talking about chain smoking cigarettes. I never, let me tell you about my cigarette smoking odyssey. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My parents smoked and I thought it was disgusting. Okay. And I used to sit at the dinner table with them both smoking and me going, right? And we were told by our teachers in both Catholic school and, in public school, what a terrible habit it was. And they bullied me in Catholic school into signing some declaration that I would never smoke, right? And so I don't know. When I was in my 20s, I lived in Vancouver at the time, and a bunch of my friends, punk rock musicians, we drove down to Seattle, and we went to this famous bar in Seattle, which has it's like 40, 50, 60 feet long, right? And they got these thousands of bottles up, with mirrors, right? Beautiful place. And they're famous for cigars. So, okay, have a cigar, right? And then when I got back to Vancouver, I started buying these cigars at the local store. They were Cuban cigars, which we can buy in Canada legally. They're called Tueros, I think. They come in a metal tube, right? I don't know. They were like $1 or so, or $1 or $2 at the time. So I started smoking cigars. And I remember one day, you're not supposed to inhale cigars, right? And I thought, I'm sort of perverse in this respect. Yeah, they tell me I'm not allowed to inhale cigars. Well, why not? And so one day I'm in my apartment and I have one of these big, Cuban cigars. And I decide, okay, I'm going to jump over that bridge and I just inhale it. And then one of the greatest things in my life is when cliches come true. You know that cliche, the room turned black? The room turned black. I couldn't see anything. And it's just, and I managed to put this cigar down and stumble into my bedroom and collapse on the bed. And about 30 minutes later, I got up and I thought, okay, that's why people don't inhale cigars. But I was spending so much money on cigars. This was when I was 27 years old. I hadn't smoked before I was 27. I thought it's going to be cheaper to switch to cigarettes. Man,
it was back then.
Those were halcyon days, man. I used to smoke Gitane and Gauloises from France, right?
Yeah.
Or even like Sobranis, Balkan Sobranis from Eastern Europe or from Russia.
Those Gauloises are heavy smokes, man.
Gauloise was a little too heavy for me. I preferred the Gitane. But so much of it was the art, If you look at the box, at the Gitane box, Gitane means gypsy, right? And that beautiful illustration, right? And then when they got, what happened in Canada was that the Canadian government said you need a separate tax stamp for all different jurisdictions. And the Gitane and the Gauloises were made under license in Quebec, because French people, right? And they said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So I switched to Pall Malls, which at the time you could get in 100 millimeter, no filter, right? I remember when I lived in San Diego in the 90s, you'd get a carton of Pall Malls for $14. And I thought, okay, you want to ask me what paradise on earth is? Paradise on earth is when I can get a carton of Pall Malls, 100 millimeter for $14, right? But if you look at the Pall Mall, the old-fashioned Pall Mall box, I used to, the crush proof, as they call them, packages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have all this art, this really complicated art, right? And including, amazingly, the phrase in hoc signo vinces. In this sign, we will conquer. which is what came to Constantine the Great when he was knocked sideways by the Lord who appeared to him before the Battle of Milvan, right? And they use this as their motto, in hoc signo vinces. But since then, the cigarette, if you look at the old cigarette art, a lot of it is really beautiful, and a lot of it is really complicated. But then I read about this years ago, starting from about the 1970s. This theme took over advertising, the idea of classy but classless, right? Because if you look at, say, the old Pall Mall cigarette holders, it's like, this seems to bespeak of some sort of oldness, right? Some sort of ancestry. And I'm ruthlessly democratic, so I hate this.
Now the cigarettes are all like straight out of George Orwell's 1984. You remember that in the state-run cigarettes that in the book where the main character would pull it out and it wasn't ever rolled properly and they all looked generic and the same. That's what it is now here.
Well, no, in my country, Canada, and I can now, since I'm not on camera, I can't show you this. So let's say the cigarette package is this big. The amount of space which is allowed for the name of the cigarette is like this big, right? And it's all completely generic. Such that now in Canada, people frequently buy the wrong kind of cigarette because it's impossible to tell the difference anymore.
The state-run cigarettes from 1984. That's what it reminded me of when I came back to Canada.
You know, I remember reading Oberon Waugh, one of my heroes. If you listen to my shows, you know he's one of my heroes. He pointed out, going back to the 1980s, that governments earn a fortune from cigarette taxes. This was even before Bill Clinton's shakedown of the tobacco industry in the 90s, right? And these evil tobacco mongers. Okay, then maybe you should stop collecting all that money, all the billions you collect from smokers, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've heard my rant before, but I'll give it to you again. According to Sir Richard Dahl, who is a famous British physician, smokers on average die 5 years earlier than non-smokers, which means that smokers save governments a fortune, both in pension costs and in medical costs.
That's right.
So last year I had a bit of a medical scare, and I was met with a pulmonologist, and I asked him, I told him, hey, listen, I smoke under 5 cigarettes a day. Some days I don't smoke at all. Is there any long-term health ramifications of doing this? And he kind of sighed and looked to the ground. And he says, look, most people that get lung cancer, they actually have a gene that causes it, and smoking exasperates that one-off gene to get lung cancer. So I'm like, oh, so you're saying it's okay to smoke? Because I didn't say that, but there's more evidence out now.
Yeah, but lung cancer incidence hasn't collapsed. I mean, it used to be there's something like 3/4 of Americans smoked, and now it's down to like 20% or whatever. And the incidence of lung cancer hasn't collapsed.
Maybe it's not smoking. Maybe it's not smoking or genetic. Maybe it's something else they're not telling us.
I'm thinking of, you may have heard of the famous psychologist Hans Eysenck, who he wrote a bunch of books, which you may have come across, about IQ. Know Your IQ, Test Your IQ. They were published by Penguin. They sold millions of copies. Anyway, it was his view that cigarette smoking has nothing to do with cancer, that it has to do with class. That poor people tend to make bad health decisions across the board. And poor people are more likely to be smokers than upper class people. Now we know for a fact, and this has been admitted for like 20 years, the very most unhealthy thing that you can be is to be fat. To be fat, or, as they call it now, morbidly obese.
Obese, yeah.
That is the incidence, the chances of you dying early just from being morbidly obese completely trumps cigarette smoking.
Well, the top 3 deaths, what are they? Heart disease, diabetes.
Cancer.
Is it cancer?
Yeah.
Heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And that's all kinds of cancer, not just lung cancer. And all 3 of those can be traced back to diet. All 3 of them.
Yeah. Do you remember in Breaking Bad at the very beginning? You've seen Breaking Bad, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Where Walter White gets lung cancer and it's like, I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. I was never in a smoking section of my life. How could this happen to me?
Yeah.
It's just a roll of the genetic dice, basically, for a lot of people. I think there's a tendency to want to blame people for the illnesses that they have, right? Well, the reason you're dying is because you made bad choices. That's not always the case. I mean, it's often the case.
Oh, the reason you're dying is that one time on an airplane flight in the 1980s, you were mistakenly assigned to the smoking section. And you breathed in this second. I know a lot of people think like that. Okay. I know a lot of people think like that. Oh, there's a famous British satirist, Michael Wharton, who called himself Peter Simple. And he wrote in the 1990s of the Church of Jesus Christ, the non-smoker, radical adherents of which believe that those who have never smoked will never die.
Yeah, they live for the key to immortality.
It has parallels to the COOF ideology, right? If you wear a mask, you'll never get it, right? You take the elixir, then you'll be safe.
I remember when I was living in Surrey, last year, 2 years ago, my father died and I was living in his condo for a few months because the will hadn't been probated and the apartment was just going to be empty. They could sell it, right? And I'd see these people on the street. Right across the street was one of Canada's biggest malls, right? And I'd see these people on the street walking along with their masks. And I thought, how do you think this works? Do you think that like the coronavirus gang is all hiding out by a lamppost, at the end of the street? And they see someone walking down the street. He doesn't have a mask. And one of them says, I'll go for his eyes. And the other says, I'll go for his nose. I'll go for his mouth. Is that what they think? Is they think that's how that works?
Well, you had people, you had people going into restaurants with a mask and then taking it off to sit down. It's so fucking bizarre. I don't know, man. The minds.
Let me back up. When I knew it was a farce was May of 2020 when airlines decided they will not be serving alcoholic beverages on airplanes due to COVID. I'm like, wait a second, that makes absolutely no whatsoever.
No, but it does in this sense that a lot of people are scared to fly in airplanes. I know I am one of them. I'm absolutely terrified. And what I do typically is to get drunk. Okay. But however, drunk people cause a lot more problems than sober people. So they just use COVID-19 as an excuse to stop selling alcohol.
It's used, the COOF is used as an excuse for everything now. It's really incredible. Our quality of life has been reduced and the COOF is the fig leaf justification for it. You'll go to a hotel and they'll say, well, the fitness center is closed. Why? Due to COOF.
Exactly.
But it's
exactly when I was living at my father's condo, they had, a gym, they had all these amenities. No, we're closed down. And in the hotel where I'm staying, every hotel has a computer on the ground floor, right? Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Closed down. The ice machine is closed down. The ATM machine is closed down. This is an example of what Kingsley Amis, one of my favorite writers, called the easier for them principle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something I noticed too, is like everything started shutting down right when I started my business. This is when it hit. Everything starts shutting down. I'm still working. And then I realized people just are demoralized. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything.
Right. It's an excuse used by people not to work also.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just really.
Well, particularly teachers. That's my,
Yeah.
I've been, if you watch my show, you've heard me joke about this. Let me tell you about the dream of the teacher, which is that instead of getting, 3 or 4 months holiday a year, they get 12 months holiday a year with
Yeah.
full pay.
Pensions, yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
No, you've noticed, apparently still in Canada, like the word was put out a couple of weeks ago, civil servants, you have to go back to your job. For 2 years, more than half of Canada's civil servants have been working remotely.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm sure you're getting a lot of work done working remotely. I've seen these displays. One of my favorite was there was some woman working remotely from home. And these islands they have in high-tech kitchens, right? The island in the middle. So there she is at her laptop, tap, 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 tap. And she's got a baby on the island crawling around. And I'm thinking, why would you put a baby there? Because you're going to have to watch this baby like a hawk. Otherwise, it's going to fall 4 feet to the ground, right?
Yeah.
How much work do you think you're getting done
I've
while there's a
noticed
crawling crawling around you?
There's been a lot of this, and now, I mean, it used to be, according to my parents, when women really started entering the workforce, in large numbers, when you had a kid, you basically try to separate that from work as much as possible, right? You downplay it, and now I see women, playing that up and saying, well, I'm at home with the kid, and of course I'm working, but I got to take care of the kid, and I have to walk the dog, and it's like, well, but if you're doing those things, you're not working.
No, you're not working.
I mean, how can you really be working?
A few years ago, I was working for this publication that I was involved in, like a startup about the mining industry, the junior mining industry mostly. And so we had this business meeting at one of the partners at homes. And so this woman who was in the company, she brought her kid who was like, I don't know, 18 months or 2 years old. And so we were out in the patio and there's all these stairs, and this kid comes out and eventually, falls down and smacks his head. And I'm thinking, who brings a kid to a business meeting? This is just stupid. Okay.
Single mom.
But men have become so weak as to say, no, you're not going to do that. Okay.
Right.
Because you are going to be obsessed, with the safety of your kid. And everyone else, all the men are being looking, hey, is this kid going to fall down a flight of stairs? Because that would be bad.
Men are so, I'm just astonished. Well, I don't want to derail the discussion if we're going to talk about it.
No, we could get into that. Let's take it another.
It's just men are just so weak. It's just even the most powerful or influential CEOs are out there groveling to the woke crowd. It's like, does anybody have any balls anymore to stand up to this?
There was that computer. There was that
you're going to be put in a gulag.
There was that computer firm, and maybe you can help me out here. It was a fairly famous example a year ago where the company got really woke, and apparently the management wasn't woke enough, and the management said, bye-bye.
Yes.
Here's your separation agreement. Don't let the ass hit your, don't let the doorknob hit your ass on the way out.
I know what you're talking about. I forget the name of the company, but there was also like a beverage company that did that as well, with a German or Austrian CEO, and he fired all the woke managers.
Good.
I'm going to step out here just for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
I have to, as I say, spend a penny. Okay. I'll be back.
Hey, Nick, if you want to transition into the main topic, speaking of men having no balls, what about that Zelensky guy?
Dude, he's a. What I didn't share or discuss it with you or any of the previous few live streams. I got a video of him completely drunk on national television. So I want to have a few shots of vodka with Putin. We can settle this man, one-on-one, man-to-man. I'm like, dude, what's wrong with you, man?
And that also ties into what we were talking about with actors and politicians, or entertainers and politicians. I think you need to be an entertainer to be a politician. Zelensky is a homosexual, cross-dressing Jew who was a comedian and actor.
And portrayed being a president.
Yes, in a show. So there's your transition into Ukraine. And I'm actually quite curious to hear what you guys are going to say about it, because I've been really sitting on the sidelines when it comes to that.
We're talking about Zelensky and the ongoing situation.
Well, just what's happening right now.
Well, I think he actually bought real estate in the United States recently. I don't know if Foreign Devil, Expat Aftermath knows anything about it.
I did.
Go.
Go ahead.
I did hear that he owns a $30 million mansion in Miami. I don't know if that's true. I'm sort of increasingly skeptical of anything I read anymore because everyone seems to be very dishonest.
No shit.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me though if he owns a lot of real estate in the U.S. It's just kind of a common thing for rich foreigners.
Kevin, I read that article that you sent me that Kevin wrote. So I'm kind of curious to hear his opinion too on what's happening. But I hear you. It's very hard for me to trust anything I see or hear about what's happening, because again, these people are entertainers to a certain degree. It literally is their job to act and lie.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of my coworkers got all excited about this Madison Hawthorne guy. I think he's a senator in Western North Carolina and Appalachia, and he called Zelensky a bully, and it's like, oh wow, nice, he said something based, and I'm like, slow down. Okay, you guys are all excited about something he said.
Right.
I mean, you
have to look at what people do.
We just want to hear a little bit of the truth and get excited, and then we'll go ahead and vote for that guy. Is that how far we have fallen, that we just get excited over someone speaking an ounce of truth, that we have to go ahead and vote for someone like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, have you been following the campaign of Eric Zemmour in France?
Oh,
know about him?
Is that the Jew guy?
He's this Algerian Jew, right? The Pied Noir, they called them, Blackfeet, right? Who were forced out of Algeria after France surrendered. He's just this ferocious right-wing guy who's gone so far to say that, all these immigrants who've committed crimes in France, we're going to deport them.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just thought, well, yeah, because I hear this in my own country, because all these immigrants who come here, they commit all these crimes. Oh, no, it was a minor crime. You know what? We have the absolute sovereignty to admit anyone or not to admit anyone. I don't want someone who stole a candy bar to be admitted to my country. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to steal a candy bar. It's not like you're starving or anything.
Right.
And someone like Zemmour shows up. This has been one of the most positive things that I've seen, like in years, that someone says things that were completely obvious, right? And, oh, how dare he say that? Yeah, because what? They're completely obvious. We don't want our country overrun by what Sarkozy called racaille, which in French means rabble, right? Why would we want our countries overrun by rabble?
Sort of opening the Overton window, putting these forbidden topics on the table again. I think that's very important as a first step.
Well, sure. I hear, I'm always amused. Oh, yes. Oh, we don't want all these Somalis in our country. Oh, people said the same thing about the Irish. Well, I'm Irish,
They did.
And the Irish were kind of troublesome.
They were
for a generation or two, and then they assimilated, right? But here's the difference between the Irish and the Somalis. 1, the Irish are white. 2, the Irish are European. 3, the Irish were Christian, okay?
Well, look at Joe Biden, though. He's Irish. Not a great
example. He's not a good at advertisement, okay?
There are like really extreme right-wing people like Brett Stevens of America.org who thinks that the Irish are basically the root of all evil.
Were you the person who first told me that?
I might have been.
On Twitter?
I like to share his stuff on. Yeah, he's the only sort of like, he's one of the only non-Christian right-wingers that I follow because he's.
It's funny because I like Brett Stevens' stuff, But
Yeah.
then I looked into it, after you nudged me, and he's completely demented on this
He
subject.
really,
right?
really, really hates the Irish.
The Irish were they went heavily for Trump in 2016, right?
That's interesting.
I think they were back in the day, when they were coming off the boat, they were hated way more than the Negroes
We hate them.
at the time. They hated it.
The Italians went heavily for Trump as well in 2016.
Mm.
It's a little bit strange in growing up with Irish Americans, like second and third generation. There's always been like a little bit of feud between the two of us, and for whatever reason, Irish tend to always vote. The Italians seem to vote far right, and I don't know. I just always thought that was kind of weird, like that dynamics. Like, why would Italian Americans vote right, and then the Irish vote for the left?
But they didn't with Trump.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny. I think of Staten Island, right?
Oh yeah.
Which apparently in recent years has become notorious as a right-wing stronghold,
Big time.
which I find hilarious, But now we're supposed to believe, it's all about Pete Davidson. You know who that guy is?
Oh yes. Why do women find him attractive?
He looks like I just imagine some woman having sex with him thinking he's going to die on top of me, right? He's going to die on top of me.
He looks like he's on Oxycontin all the time. He looks like a drug. And why would mainstream media, Hollywood, promote him as being somewhat of a sexual icon?
I'll tell you why Saturday Night Live promotes him, because they're looking forward to him dying live on stage. Okay, seriously,
Possibly.
Oh yeah, he's involved with Kim Kardashian. No, he isn't. Are you kidding? If this guy can actually even get it up and deliver it, I'd be shocked.
But he's not funny. He's not a comedian. I don't understand.
Of course he's not funny.
To him, it's so weird.
It's very strange who gets promoted and elevated.
Well, maybe it was you.
Worst of the worst.
It was either you or Devin Stack ripping on Saturday Night Live, and me and Expat Aftermath spent like maybe 20 minutes or a half hour a couple months ago talking a little about SNL. And my father, I grew up watching Saturday Night Live. I absolutely loved it. And my father had mentioned that Saturday Night Live completely went off the rails when they let Tina Fey.
Which era did you grow up on Saturday Night Live?
Right after Chris Farley, Adam Sandler.
What you talking about? Phil Hartman?
No. I'm 34, so I came to Saturday Night Live like in 96, 97. My dad used to let us stay up and watch it. It's like Will Ferrell's first year into Saturday Night Live.
Okay. You don't like Tina Fey?
But somehow I'm quoting my father about it, because me and my father had a long discussion about this. As soon as they put her in the wheelhouse with writing and such, she injected a lot of feminism talking points, and it turned into it got way too into politics. Like
you've seen 30 Rock?
No, I never watched it.
No, 30 Rock is maybe the best American television show ever made. Maybe the best network television show ever made. And Tina Fey's just mockery of feminism and liberalism. It's shocking to watch it now. Okay. This show is like a decade old. One of my favorite bits is she's having this argument with Jack, Alec Baldwin, about Obama. She loves Obama. And Jack says to her, yeah, okay, what's Obama ever done? This is, like 2012, right? And she says, well, that thing that he did, it was in the news. There was a woman, right? And there was that other thing that he did, right? It's like, the joke is like, yeah, what's Obama done? We can't come up with anything, right?
What's her background, or?
She was a writer and comedian for Saturday Night Live.
No, I mean like her.
She's Greek Orthodox.
Do you know how she got that scar on her face, Mr.
Yeah, I know. She was attacked by a black person, and she doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Flashed it. It's not funny anymore. And I want to bring up, with Alec Baldwin making fun of Donald Trump, it was more like, just being nasty. Like when Darrell Hammond used to do Bill Clinton, or Phil Hartman used to do Bill Clinton, or Will Ferrell used to do George Bush, it was funny. when they started making fun of Trump, it's not funny. It's just being a jerk. It's more like bully and mockery.
I feel sad for Alec Baldwin, and I must confess a certain ethnic affiliation with Alec Baldwin, because
Brett Stevens was right.
We're both Normans, okay? We're both Normans, okay? Alec Baldwin is an outstanding actor, both as a dramatic actor and a comedian. But again, his Trump impersonation, it's like, okay, why don't you yell at the screen or whatever, and could you make it funny, please? Because none of this is funny. You're just showing your anger.
Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me about Alec Baldwin is I know at his core, he's an unconstricted, hard-ass, Long Island Irish Catholic, okay? That's who Alec Baldwin is. But he's just, he's just been corrupted by, I mean, look at the guy. His second wife, his first wife, he has a child with her, which he named his first child Ireland. And I'm thinking, just stop it, man. Just don't, okay? This is just so
a girl's
stupid.
name?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
He named his the only child with that actress that he married was named Ireland. You're Irish. We get it, okay? He named her Ireland. But then he marries this phony Spanish woman, right, from Boston. And they have like 7 children now. Or they're up to 7. They're about to come up with 7. And I'm thinking, hey, man, I really dig this, okay? We're told in the book of Genesis, be fruitful and multiply, and you are following that dictum. I admire him for that.
But that woman, she pretended to be from Spain, right? And she
I know,
with a fake Spanish accent.
I know.
Years and years.
No, I'll tell you the best thing, because you read these stories, you don't get the full humor. That her name is supposedly Hilaria, right? Which is not a real name, but what we are told, what I've learned is it's supposed to be pronounced Hilaria.
Baldwin.
And that was me on Twitter, by the way, that you had mentioned about Alec Baldwin. He did an interview maybe 10 or 15 years ago that he's absolutely ashamed of his acting career.
Why would he be ashamed of his acting career?
He said his best movie he ever did was about a submarine. So that
yeah, he was in 2 David Mamet films. Okay,
yeah.
And he was outstanding in them.
He stole the show for Glengarry Glen Ross. That first scene basically, ruined the rest of the movie.
You look at the powerhouses that are in that movie, and then David Mamet wrote this scene specifically for him, where he waltzes in the middle of the movie, and just that's all everyone's talking about. Okay, coffee is for closers.
Yeah. ABC, always be closing.
You see this watch? This watch costs more than your car.
Going down that quoting.
Sorry, me and Expat Aftermath recently watched together Talk Radio, and I forgot that Alec Baldwin was in it, and he was like in his late 20s when he did that movie, and he was outstanding.
No, if you've never seen 30 Rock, Alec Baldwin is just outstanding in this show, okay? Because he largely plays the straight man, but he's really, really good at it, One of my favorite bits is there's this competition between him, Tina Fey or whatever, and he has to say things to Tina Fey like, there is no cake, or I'm the protagonist. Just great stuff, I've heard that what Art Linson, the producer, wrote. Actually, Robert De Niro was in a movie based on Art Linson's memoir, which has to do with crazy Alec Baldwin story, where he's cast in a movie and he has a beard, and everyone tells him, the producer director, you got to get rid of the beard, right? No, I'm not getting rid of the beard. What is wrong with you, man? You just shave your beard, okay? And then in the movie that was made about this, he shows up with like half his beard shaved, and I don't know. Actors are crazy people. They're just absolutely crazy people.
Let
Good
me
at
ask you,
politics too.
wait, so what my personal favorite, my favorite actor, Tom Sizemore. What do you think of him?
I've seen him in many things, and I like him. Has he been arrested or charged with assault or murder or anything like that?
Not a clue, but he's shot. I don't know what. I don't know where he.
Because I'm thinking of the movie Heat, where
Oh,
various
yeah.
people associated with that have been arrested, for assault, and murder, and such like.
Yeah, he was great in that movie. I wish he did a lot more. Recently, he was on a podcast and he was talking about how he was hanging out with Bill Clinton. He was getting drunk with Bill Clinton, and Tom Sizemore gave Bill Clinton Elizabeth Hurley's number. Started prank calling Elizabeth Hurley, saying it's a matter of national security. I need you right now here in the Oval Office. He kept calling Elizabeth Hurley to try to, to fornicate.
Well, what? Bill Clinton has been associated with
To smoke a cigar with her.
Gina Gershon, right? Also associated with that chick from the X-Files. What's her name? Gillian Anderson,
Gillian
right?
Anderson, yeah. Mhm.
All these chicks associated with Bill Clinton. I don't know. This is interesting to me. It's like it's a new way of looking at politics, because people used to go into politics to get power or to become rich. But the idea of people going into politics to get pussy is something new and rather strange to me.
Yeah,
Let's
that is bizarre.
changing topics here. Let's talk a little bit about the article that you had sent us. I read it and I forwarded it to Aftermath, and I am serious. Great article. A lot of things I probably had, a lot of things I have known already, a little bit about the American Empire and such. What made you fascinated with the article? Let me get the title here, and I'll be sure to put it in the show notes. A little bit about the article and a little bit of your ideas on what's happening in Ukraine.
Okay, it's called Ukraine and the Global American Empire by a German who calls himself Eugipius, which of course is a Roman name, March the 8th. It struck me, I'm always looking for new explanations for the world that I live in, you hear these liberals talk about lifelong learning. Well, I'm actually interested in lifelong learning. I love to learn things, okay? And Eugipius, I don't know, about a month or two before this, had written a piece called The Devolution of Political Power. Because we tend to look at the people who rule us as like, oh, these people who are up here, right? He described how the powers come down, all the way down. And you can see this, say, even with people on Twitter. If you go into leftist Twitter, and you look at these people, and it's like, you're a nobody. Why have you totally invested yourself in the regime narrative? Because they are aspirational, right? They're aspirational.
That's aspirational?
Well, no, it is, because they think that one day they're going to be part of the regime.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay,
this
okay.
Russian political scientist, Peter Turchin, has written about this, and he's predicted much of what has happened in the United States in this decade. He talks about the overproduction of elites. And this is a critical problem, which is faced, the French Revolution, Cambodian Revolution, et cetera, when people, or let's say you get a master's degree and you find yourself $150,000 in debt and you're no good for anything but working at Starbucks. If you can get an interview, that's the sort of thing that leads to revolution, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But you see this. Oh, yeah, you have to wear masks. You have to get jabbed. Like, what's your interest in this exactly? How are you invested in this?
If I can interject a thought, John Robb, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's a sort of, he wrote the book Brave New War, former special forces guy. He has a theory that's very similar to this, using different terminology, but he calls it sort of the networked tribe. And these, facilitated by social networking, and it sort of recruits people into these online tribes that have a life of their own. and they swarm the institutions, right? So we see that with Ukraine, for example, the traditional political establishment isn't necessarily as gung-ho on getting involved in a war with Russia as this online swarm. The swarm is pushing the institutions to engage in war. And we saw the same pattern at the beginning of COVID, where it's like the panic started on Twitter first, and it raged for like 2 weeks before the politicians actually responded. And you almost feel like, Twitter is sort of driving politics more than the actual politicians.
No, it is. I just remember, you might have seen this. It was about 3 months ago, a leading Israeli epidemiologist or, scientist, he had talked about the whole, sanitary dictatorship. And he said, if this had been not made specific, that is to say, COVID hysteria, no one would have noticed it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
Thought, yes,
Yep.
it's true. Because every year, tens of thousands of people die of the flu, old people mostly.
Mhm.
And some years are more severe than others, right?
I wonder about that. It does seem like if you look at all-cause deaths, there was a significant increase in mortality, at least in the U.S. in 2020 and 2020. Well, 2020 first, it was about 400,000 more people than we might have expected.
Yeah,
that year.
and why might that be? Let
Well,
me tell you.
It's not because of a germ.
I'm not
I'll tell you that.
disagreeing.
Let me
Yeah.
tell you a story, okay? One of my brothers has been seriously ill for several years. Really seriously, a whole bunch of operations. And 2 years ago, at the height of the sanitary dictatorship, he had to go to the hospital because of something serious, okay? Only COVID cases were allowed in the hospital, okay? And this is in a major Canadian city. And so he's finally let into the hospital, which he told me was deserted, okay?
Yeah.
It was simply deserted. And then he told me that a doctor had told him, if you'd waited another day, you'd be dead.
I remember you
Right.
mentioning that.
Yeah. Well, do you know the Don Jeffries, speaking of brothers, are you familiar with the
Donald
author, Don Jeffries?
Donald Jeffries.
Yeah, he wrote an essay or a blog, a couple months ago talking about what happened to his brother, that his brother was perfectly healthy, around 70 years old or something, but he had, psychological and mental issues. He fell out of his bed one day, called 911. They took him to the hospital and gave him a bunch of tests. He was perfectly fine. But one of the tests was, of course, a COVID test, and he tested positive, completely healthy and asymptomatic.
Mhm.
And so they said, well, we're keeping him in the hospital. He died a few weeks later.
And he didn't make it out alive.
Didn't make it out alive.
I know. I've got stories like that too, man. It's fucking insane.
It's surreal.
It is, but it's not an accident. It is a very, and they've done it before in the past.
We know the evidence from Britain, from the records from Britain, that you are more likely to be infected in the hospital by COVID than anywhere else. Okay. That you want to stay away from hospitals.
Right.
I know this is kind of off course, but every Halloween or whatever, sexy nurse costumes, and I don't think they're sexy. Why don't you think they're sexy? Because I associate nurses with hospitals. And
Nurses
I
are
associate
not sexy.
hospitals with death. Okay.
Right.
Nurses are cunts, in my experience.
Oh, you want to hear something? You want to hear something about 20, 30 years? No, let's go back even further than that. Let's go back to the birth of my children. Okay. That I found out that, nurses, you're working for the patients, are you? No, apparently you're working for yourselves. Oh, you all have to take a break at the same time? Why? Why do you have to take a break at the same time? It's just like, oh, yes, my child is in the hospital in an incubator and so boring, right? 2 of my children were in an incubator for like a month, right? And the attitude of nursing staff was,
Right.
oh, you, Mr. Difficult again.
Right.
Oh
Well, it's like
God.
these teachers who think that, if they're prevented from chit-chatting with their students about their marriage or their weekend plans, then it's some kind of, oppression.
But there
Yeah.
was a campaign by nurses. I don't know whether it was Alberta or British Columbia, but it was really scary. And there was like bus posters and like, doctors don't keep you alive, nurses do. And I thought,
Oh shit.
this sounds like a threat. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very
Fuck.
disturbing.
How about during early COVID, all the signs about support, nurses and essential workers, or how wonderful
Just
they are.
blowing smoke up their ass.
I
man.
was blown away. I never seen so many signs since 9/11 all around New York about essential workers, how wonderful the police are, and how nurses are on the front lines saving lives. It was grotesque.
No, it's hilarious to me because you think these are like nuns who work for free? They're very
Right.
highly paid. Okay.
Right. I respect what they do. I obviously, if I were in a
What do
hospital,
they
I'd be
do?
grateful for good care that I would receive. But this sort of incessant public celebration, and then of course we all remember the clap for the NHS in England, clapping in New York City, going out on the balcony and clapping. I mean, this was sick. When that happened, I knew we had gone completely off the rails. And of course, now we're seeing the perverted, the mirror image of that in China today, where people are screaming from their balconies in Shanghai that they don't have enough food.
Well, during that whole pandemic over that 2-year period, I was in the emergency room of my local hospital 2 times. And it was a nightmare dealing with the nurses. Not only that, the emergency rooms were fucking empty. There was nobody fucking there. I saw ambulance drivers just sitting smoking cigarettes because there was nothing to do. And
Yep.
I refused to wear a mask. And holy shit, man, that was entertaining. That was fucking entertaining. Just arguing with these fucking nurses the whole time. Oh, and like just this little robot repeated voice. My job is to educate you. My job is to educate you. And I'm like, no, it's not.
No,
Your job
no.
is to take my fucking blood pressure and
Yeah.
get me in to see a doctor.
Right.
It's oh my God.
Have you ever been like personal with nurses?
No.
Because I have, and I can tell you something. Okay. What do nurses deal with? They deal with terrible things every day. Okay. And so let's just put aside all this COVID-19 bullshit. Okay.
Mhm.
But how, they're innocent, tender hearts being pierced or whatever. My experience, that I've done quite a few nurses in my time, is they have absolute gallows humor. Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you see like disgusting, fucked up stuff every day, you have to come up with some sort of coping mechanism. Okay.
I
Yeah, like
suppose.
soldiers on the front lines, kind of.
But, well, they were really anxious to stick a needle in me, though, trying to find any excuse. I was like, you fucking.
Storm of steel with these, white TikTok nurses. All right. I mean, I personally.
Storm of Steel? You're going to bring an Ernst Jünger reference here?
Well, I'm actually halfway done with the book. It's fantastic, but that's
Okay.
there. So I personally boil it down to the infantilizing of Western women. That's just my personal 2 cents. Like, you're a hero. You're amazing. Good for you, good girl. You're just awesome. Meanwhile, guys, no one's talking about the janitor to an apartment building who's got to haul out trash. All these guys getting COVID and such. People that clean the streets. I mean,
Right.
I don't want to talk too much about the police force. I'm not a big Blue Lives Matter kind of a guy, but again, just the treating women. It's all about you, girl. You got this. Career driven. Like, well, she's 25 years old and she has a really bad. Her boyfriend sells fentanyl, and she's living in your basement, and you're treating her like a child.
Yeah, but let's go back. Let's go back
Hypoagency,
generations,
man.
2 generations, 3 generations, hundreds of generations. Women used to give birth, and I don't know, largely alone,
In a ditch,
like in
with a stick
in
in their mouth.
terrible pain, and no one made a fuss about it. Okay,
Yeah.
no one made a fuss about it.
Everybody needs to get their trophy, their participation trophy. It's really, I mean, you wonder how we're going to deal with genuine hardship, and I'm not denying that a lot of people have dealt with
That's
hardship,
coming,
but
and that's
it is
coming
coming.
fast.
yeah,
Hey.
the
Oh.
weak men create hard times, right?
Right.
Let me tell you a story. You might find this amusing. Okay. I remember reading Midge Decter in Commentary Magazine, Norman Horace's wife. Very clever woman she was. And she was talking about the habit of men being forced to attend the birth of their children.
Mhm.
And she concluded that it was sadism, pure and simple. And I thought, yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Okay. It's like, you put me in the position. No, you're going to have to suffer. Right. So anyway, when my first child was born, I went to the hospital, but I didn't go into the operating room. And the mother's husband was there as well. And I just heard these blood curdling noises coming, right? Just a succession of different blood curdling noises, you know? And at one point I thought, apparently my child has been born, but as a mutant, and this disgusting mutant, right? And it just, I could hardly bear it. I couldn't bear it. And except that my father-in-law couldn't bear it more than me. And he strolled into the operating theater and took a punch at the doctor.
Wow.
And then a nurse came out and said, "You have to go home now."
Wow.
And after that, I just stayed completely away from the birth of my children. Okay. Because there's nothing I can contribute, nothing at all.
Wow. I almost punched out the nurse when my ex-wife was having our kid, because they were trying to force a C-section on her, and I refused. I was like, yeah, go to hell. You're not cutting her open. And it was a battle. I had to sign papers. They're like, well, if you don't did a C-section, you got to sign this paper just in case something goes wrong. I'm like, what? Something goes wrong? A lot more can go wrong if you fucking cut her stomach.
I don't know.
open.
It's like, now we bring back midwives now, because this is like a female thing, right?
Mhm.
Well, what are you going to contribute? I can't contribute anything. All I'm feeling is horror and terror. Okay. So I don't want to be anywhere near this. Okay. Because you may have heard, this is funny. We're talking about male sexuality here, but I've read, and apparently there are studies that back this up, that when men see the baby crowning through the woman's vagina, it's like their sex drive just evaporates at that point.
I don't know, man.
Certain things
I
we're not supposed to see.
stood and watched the whole fucking thing. I wasn't gonna leave. I wanted to see the whole goddamn
Really?
thing, man. Oh yeah.
You like to see women
That's not
shrieking
that I
in-
like to.
You
but
like
I-
to see
I
women
wanted to.
shrieking in terror?
I don't know. No, but I mean, I wanted to see the process.
Yeah.
And,
No, I
and
don't want to
everybody
see
was
the
trying
process.
to kick. Everybody's trying to kick me out, and I'm like, "Fuck you! I'm watching this."
I'm
I'm
staying.
Everyone was trying
staying
to
here.
kick you out.
Yes, they were trying to make me leave because no
Okay.
man would. Because this is in Indonesia too, man, and the men are pussies there. So a lot of them just like, okay, this is. I'll just walk away, and you guys do your shit. I'm like, fuck you. I'm coming in. I'm watching the whole goddamn thing, beginning to end. And I literally had to fight to get my wife's stomach not to get sliced open, because that was the protocol, because it costs more money. They want to make money. Oh yeah, we'll just do a C-section. And the doctor can book it like a dentist appointment. A natural birth, you kind of have to be on call, right? C-section is like, okay, this day at this time we're cutting you open, take it out, then I can go back and go golfing. It's just a racket, right? So I refused it, signed a bunch of papers, and then demanded that I sit there and watch the entire thing.
Well,
I don't trust doctors.
You're a stronger man than I am. Okay. You know, I remember years ago, I mentioned that I used to work for this magazine called Upper Report, and there was this fellow who worked for it, who later became the first editor of the National Post in Canada, and later editor of Maclean's magazine. And he was talking to the wife of my former boss, Link Byfield, about how, when he first became a parent. Oh, yes. And I was thinking, oh, shut up. Okay, really? Have you ever read Andre and War and Peace? That's how most men think of it. It's like this hideous creature comes out of your wife and it's like, yeah, okay, I guess that's my son or whatever. Right?
It's not a lovely thing to look at.
No, it's not a lovely thing to look at. But anyway, so he was telling this to this woman, and she, all this new age stuff. And I said, you know what? I decided to be aggressive. Maybe I had a couple of drinks inside me. I said, you know what? When I was born, my father was in a bar, okay? Because that's the way that it used to be. That, some man's wife was having a kid and there'd be dad in the bar, okay? And I told Ken there, who later became a huge force in Canadian journalism, I think that's the best way. So there was Ken, and there was the woman who was the mother of my publisher, and they all looked at me like they'd been punched in the stomach. That was one of the best things I ever did, okay? Because, seriously, when a child is being born, if you're not the doctor, what can you do?
You can cheerlead.
Oh, shit. You've seen it. Maybe you've been there. You've seen it. Basically, a lot of these women, it's like, you have put me in this position. You have put me through this pain. You have put me maybe responsible for this. I'm going to scream abuse
that's
at
white
you.
Women, man. That's white women.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you know any other women?
Well, my wife's or ex-wife's Indonesian. She wasn't white, so I didn't experience that. I mean, it's a difficult process. The baby wouldn't come out, so they had to, and this is common, right? If after a while of the contractions, it's just not coming out, the nurse will just cut the vagina, like an angle cut, and then the baby just flies right out, which is what happened to her. And that's very disturbing to watch. That was probably
my least favorite part. Yeah, that was my least favorite part. So it's it's difficult. Yeah, I was gonna say that, this description that I was putting to before, it's like, men really don't like horrible things happening to women. They really don't like to see that. They don't like to see women being hurt, abused, or even through natural means, bad things happening to them. So when my first child was born, as I say, I was there in the lobby or whatever, and then we were told to leave because my father-in-law tried to slug a doctor. And then when my second and third children were born, I was nowhere near it, okay? And no one made a fuss about it. No one made a fuss about it.
But you're right. Generally, I've known in my own experience and in other people's experience here in Canada, and my experience in Indonesia, is the men are kind of shuffled off to the side. That's normal. Nobody really wants the man there. That's what I found. They're like, we don't want you here.
They're not needed. Okay.
No, but I want to see my kid be born.
Why?
Fuck that. Because it's my kid. Why? I want to see that. I want to be a part of that
this
experience.
Is fairly new in historical history, right?
What's that?
That men wanting to be there when their children are born. The only reason in the past why men wanted to be there was to make sure that some fake child wasn't
Aha.
smuggled in, you know.
That's the other thing too. As soon as my kid came out of there,
Yeah.
I saw his face. I said, "That's my kid." I knew it was my kid. You know, it was like, as soon as he came out, I'm like, holy shit, that looks like my brother when he was a baby. That's my fucking kid.
It's proof.
Proof right there at the moment, man.
I love it.
So yeah, fuck these people.
How do you like all these stories of mix-ups, like lesbian couples, get inseminated from a sperm donor? It's the
Yeah, man.
sperm donor.
You're talking about the story from like a week ago?
No,
we're two lesbians. We're ordering a female embryo and they got a male embryo. And now they're so butthurt that they're suing everyone. It's like,
Well,
you're talking about
They
that
didn't
story?
kill it. They didn't kill it. That's usually what they do,
Oh,
is just
geez,
fucking kill it.
These stories are coming out every few months. I catch one of those stories.
There was also the weirdo doctor who put his own sperm into the bank and basically, inseminated all these women with his sperm, unknowingly.
Oh my God.
Well,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Oh,
He
many
only
such
found out many years later.
such cases with regard to this. It's hilarious to me that I find myself described as like angry, like
Right.
furiously angry, dangerously angry, and I'm thinking, the things that I've heard in the last few decades, what I want to be is like Leo DiCaprio, okay? Once upon a time in Hollywood, I want a flamethrower to
Right.
burn these people to death, okay?
Nuke it from orbit, right?
Well, now there's a company called Progeny that's offering its services, basically not artificial insemination, but basically they're incentivizing companies to include in the benefit package their service to have women freeze their eggs. So if you're a career woman, Progeny will
Good luck with that.
keep your eggs on ice for an extended period.
No, this just sickens me. Have any of you seen Succession, the HBO show?
No.
No.
Oh, yes.
One of the plot lines is this outsider from St. Paul, Minnesota, marries one of the girls, the Golden Girls, and she doesn't want to have a kid, right? And our hero is really, really upset about this, right? And he says, oh yeah, have sex with me. She says, yeah, but it's just been like throwing cake batter against a wall, right? It's like I have a wife and she doesn't want to have a child with me, right?
So she's on birth control or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. And he's just really sad about this. Like, you're my wife. If you're my wife, why wouldn't you want to have a child with me, right? Well, this isn't really economically viable or politically viable. And
It's
it's
so
like,
common now.
like
So
what
many
does-
women have that attitude.
What does
I don't
marriage
want a kid.
mean? What does
Right.
marriage mean if you won't have a child with me?
Yeah, it's
You know?
bizarre.
And
Fucking
then
bizarre.
she says, oh, we can freeze embryos. And when I hear that phrase, freeze embryos, again, I'm back to the flamethrower. Anyone who talks about freezing embryos, I want them burnt alive.
Is there
Okay.
any evidence that would work? Has it ever even fucking been done before? Or is this
Oh,
just,
no,
it's
apparently
a scam, man.
they go through dozens of these embryos before, which is apparently a human being, but we're just going to flush this down the toilet.
Sounds like a major scam to me, man.
So
It's
let's circle back. What Ukraine? Now,
yeah.
let me go back to the $1 million question: Is Russia, in fact, the good guys in all this, or is because I personally think this is like January 6th on steroids. I mean, they're talking about denazification of Ukraine, but they're using the word Nazi in the same vein as we use the word Nazi, and I just find it really strange, because. I mean, we understand they're Nazis. I get it, neo-Nazis and such. But, I just don't understand because, again, it's like we're witnessing January 6th
on the global scale. And that kind of alarms me because what you're doing is you're attacking nationalists, air quote nationalists, in the country of Ukraine. And
Your brain is being washed. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm much older than you. I was born in 1955, and I grew up with the legacy of the Nazis. Okay. It wasn't in my country. I had nothing to do with it, right? The
Right.
Germans are not my people. They're barely my cousins, right? But I knew about it. And now we're told, oh, yes, these Nazis, they're the good Nazis. What?
Right.
What are you talking about? The good Nazis?
That people are saying that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
The American Jewish Congress has said, oh, yeah, these
they're
Nazis,
the good Nazis.
they're not trying to kill us. So that's okay.
That's so Jewish. That's so fucking Jewish, man. It's fun. I want to mention something that happened to me, considering has to do with Ukraine and it has to do with scams. Okay. I went in to buy my son some shoes on the weekend. He needed new shoes. And so I went to a store called Sports Check. Kevin, you probably know that store.
Yeah, I know the chain.
Okay, so it's a sports store that sells shoes and sports attire and that kind of stuff. I don't know if they have in the States, but if not, you probably have something similar. It's a big corporate sports store.
Right.
I go into the store, he picks out his shoes. I go up to the counter, and right as I'm pulling out my wallet to pay, the girl at the counter goes, "Would you like to donate?" And in that moment, my mind was thinking, "Oh yeah." In that moment, my mind was thinking like, "Okay, the local homeless shelter, the food bank."
You knew it was the Ukraine. You knew it was the Ukraine.
No, I didn't. It caught me by surprise. She goes, I laughed in her face because she goes, "Would you like to donate to the literally said, the Ukraine. Would you like to donate to the Ukraine?" What the fuck does that mean? Donate to the Ukraine? It's a country, man. It's a country, bitch. That's not an organization.
Well, it used to be called the Ukraine. Like
you know what?
No,
hey,
but why not just say,
I will test your historical knowledge here.
Okay,
Do you know what
on.
the Ukraine means?
No, not well.
Literally?
What?
And this will solve all your problems. The Ukraine literally means borderlands.
The borderlands. Perfect.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, here's the thing. Why not? That to me, that was like, that's a lot of chutzpah, man. To ask me to donate to a country? What the fuck does that mean? Why not? If I wanted to up that chutzpah, in my shop, I'm going to put out a box for change. And when people come in the store, I'm going to say, "Would you like to donate to the world? Come and donate to the world. The world needs your money." What a fucking scam is that, man?
Hey, Kevin, why is the Catholic Church obsessed with donating to the Ukraine? Because I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus, and they're constantly bringing up about donating to Ukraine over and over and over again. I'm like, do you guys know where this money's actually going to?
Exactly.
Why would they do that? Okay, because as you know, if you know anything about the Ukraine or Poland for that matter, there's a huge distinction between Roman Catholic and Greek Catholic, right?
Okay.
And so the people that we're talking about in the Ukraine, they're not Roman Catholic or Greek Catholic. They're Russian Orthodox Catholic who kind of hate, the other Catholics.
Right.
So why would your church, as it were, why would they do this? Makes no sense.
Now, I looked up some of these, Azov battalion leaders and such. They are apparently all devout Catholics. I don't know if there's.
Oh no, fuck that. No, you're a Nazi and you're a devout Catholic. Come on. These people, do you know how many Poles, Catholic Poles, that these people killed during World War II? Over 100,000. Okay. They're absolute maniacs. It's weird. You live in America, you live in Canada, and you think, yeah, well, everyone's pretty reasonable here. And then you go to Eastern Europe and you find out that there's a whole bunch of people who are not reasonable at all.
Mm.
Yeah. Was your take on the whole Reddit Xbox, gamers going over to Ukraine and getting hit with a cruise missile in the first couple of days? Did you? I don't remember.
I would say that it's tragic, but it's also really funny because a whole bunch of these people had been served in the American army in Iraq or Afghanistan, right? And then you go to Ukraine and, hey, you know what it's like to have 100% air superiority, right? And you know what it's like when you lose 100% air superiority? Do you know what it's like to survive an artillery bombardment? I've never been involved in artillery bombardment, but I'm thinking this must be the most terrifying thing on earth.
Yeah, it's not a fucking Xbox game, that's for sure.
We found it to be quite fascinating how many people were willing to go over there with really no foreknowledge, or even probably couldn't even point on a map where Ukraine is, willing to sign up to go.
Oh, no, but if you look at Reddit, a whole bunch of people, oh, I'm going to be a sniper. You didn't choose your role in foreign military? Why did you think you would get to choose your role in a foreign military, right? And a whole bunch of these people have said, apparently we were like bait, all right?
Yeah, of course.
We were like bait, because if Westerners get killed, then the Western countries will care, because they wanted us to die.
There's a blogger named Big Country Expat who's a former or maybe current mercenary. And he said every time a conflict flares up anywhere in the world, he gets emails asking him to join. And he said that was not the case with Ukraine. And that was a serious red flag for him. So something's a bit off.
Well, would you, okay. Nick, would you donate if somebody said, would you like to donate $1 to Canada?
No, of course, no.
Canada for what? What is Canada need money?
Well, that's the point, man. It's a goddamn scam. It's a scam from top to bottom, as far as I'm concerned.
I will repeat that the Ukraine is the money laundering capital of the world. It is also the white slavery capital of the world.
Yeah.
Can I push back against that a little bit, KMG? I've heard you talk about that a lot, and I'm not disputing your view on that. However, I also think there's a tendency on the right, which I resist, to sort of reduce Ukraine to a bunch of stereotypes. I mean, it is a country, right? It's a country of 33 million people or 45 million people, depending on how you count it.
Well, it's
right?
about 40 million people.
Yeah, but there is an internal. In fact, so many people have fled Ukraine that, according to like the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences or something, there's only 33 million left.
It's hilarious to me.
It became a country right after the USSR broke up.
Well, yes, but a lot of countries were newly created after the USSR broke up, and we don't say that they don't have the right to exist, right? I mean, a country has the right to exist.
So your point is that.
Well, so my point is that I would like to push back against the tendency to sort of constantly demonize Ukraine. Not that I have a dog in this fight.
I have never thought anything about the Ukraine until about let's say 2014, when the American government decided to overthrow their government, okay? Mm-hmm. I'd never given a thought to the Ukraine before that.
The Ukraine
I give very little thought to Ukraine.
Yeah.
But I see it as a country, and it is, obviously there is this Nazified element, this neo-fascist element, whatever you like to call it. But by the same token, I think if you ask the average Ukrainian, they don't like being invaded very much. And I sympathize with that also.
No,
right?
I understand everything that you're saying, except that, and I really feel very bad that all these Ukrainians are being killed, particularly those that the Azov Brigade are using as human shields, okay? Mm-hmm. But again, why should I care about the Ukraine?
I'm not
seriously. I don't like being manipulated in this way.
Nor I.
I seriously don't like being manipulated in this way. If you tell me about a story in which people are being killed, in which people are being manipulated and being killed, and government is all about hurting people. I think that's terrible. That shouldn't happen. And then I read about the Ukraine, and I think that's the whole joke. Okay.
Oh, I don't like being manipulated either. And there's been a very intense propaganda campaign to support Ukraine, which I'm very skeptical of. At the same time, I think there is also manipulation in the other direction.
No, there is.
fog.
How is it? How is it that I'm gonna call him Elinsky, okay? Because I'm told by reliable authorities that the use of the 26th letter of the alphabet is illegal and could lead to prosecution, okay? So I'm gonna call him Elinsky, okay? That this fucking prick, is it that a Ukrainian comedian has offshore bank accounts? Seriously? How much money can you make as a Ukrainian comedian? Obviously, this guy is a fucking criminal.
An actor too.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying.
Do we know how much money he has? I mean, we were discussing this earlier, that he apparently owns some real estate in the US. However, again, I just want to point out another example of how I think there's been propaganda on both sides of this issue. Zelensky is routinely described as a comedian, a drag queen. I mean, he's also a very successful.
Yeah, he plays the piano with his dick. Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah, that's right. He did.
He produced an extremely successful TV show in Ukraine, right?
Yeah,
so,
in Ukraine.
Made money.
Ukraine
that,
is
right?
about the same population as Canada, my country, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you were the greatest comedian in Canada, you were making so much money that actually you're not making very much money at all.
You go to the States. You go to the States if you want to make
you go to the States, then you make money. Like Seth Rogen, who grew up in Vancouver, right? Okay. If you want money, you go to the States. If you want to be poor, you stay in Canada.
Jim Carrey, Norm Macdonald, just list them. All of them went to the States.
You could list many such examples.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I have a hard time. I can't personally verify almost anything that I'm told about it.
Yeah, it's becoming really hard. Kevin, how do you stay focused with such a bombardment of information, and how do you discern good information from bad information?
Well, I'll tell you that there was a British communist journalist called Claude Coburn. You know these Coburns in the media? There's a whole bunch of them, Patrick, etc., etc.
Bruce.
Yeah. And he was Evelyn Waugh's cousin, and he was a British communist. And he said cynically that never believe anything until it is officially denied.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow, I did not want to be driven to this position. Okay. But now I have been. Okay.
I think it's good advice. I think a lot of people, present company excluded, make the argument that whatever the media is saying at the moment is false. Ergo, the opposite must be true. And I would suggest that is a form of manipulation as well, right? Because sometimes what the media says happens to accidentally align with the truth. And we shouldn't always assume that whatever the media says is necessarily the opposite of the truth.
No,
it's a lie. We have to look at the facts independently.
Yeah.
I would be, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, I'd be tempted to believe you. But now I find like women in the media who take selfies of themselves with that huge eyebrow thing that they got going now. You know what I'm talking about?
The high eyebrows.
Yeah. And you're a major reporter, you're stupid. You're seriously stupid. Okay.
Right.
Someone should bring
And
back the unibrow.
I don't, again, you're a female reporter. Okay. Why don't you show me the goods? Why don't you show me your ability to report something seriously? But now it's like, oh no, I have these huge eyebrows which are going to be blinking. And anyone who disagrees with me is a misogynist. And I think, fuck you. Fuck you. Okay? You don't deserve to do anything amongst serious people.
You
all
didn't
right?
mention the problem glasses.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you give me 5 minutes. I can come up with this woman with Global
Tim.
News BC, Global News Canada, right? And it's like, oh, look, I'm wearing a Led Zeppelin T-shirt. And like, what? Seriously, dude? You're wearing a Led Zeppelin T-shirt, and you think this is giving you cred? Have you ever actually listened to Led Zeppelin? Because I don't think you have.
Probably not. Probably not. She probably couldn't name one song. I think they should make the Muslim unibrow a thing, right? That would be kind of
Like that Iranian dance woman that attacked Google.
yeah. That
I'm surprised there's not that many attacks on like the Google headquarters or any of these, Twitter headquarters or things like that. I mean, I remember how upset you were to lose all that work. Thank God. And here's the thing. Thankfully, our work was backed up
yes
by a Russian.
by a Russian. Yeah, he saved all our
Saved
videos.
all of our work.
Yeah, he did.
Explain how you almost lost it all.
Because YouTube deleted our channel, man.
Okay.
We had a
didn't back anything
shitload
up.
of stuff.
We didn't back anything up.
No, we didn't back anything up.
Through the grace of God, we found a Russian server that held onto all of our work. I was able to get in touch with him, and
Yes.
he gave us all of our content.
Yeah, it was
It's
amazing.
funny you say that because someone, I don't know who it was, decided to back up most of my YouTube videos.
Nice.
I actually, to be honest with you,
He might be Russian. He might be Russian.
I
Please
actually
trust us.
saved some of the your best chats, Mr. Grace. I saved the ones that I love the most.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you had some really.
No, it's funny. I'm a Russian bot, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't think that I've ever met a Russian person in my life.
Does Russia
I have
even
met
exist? Are we
many
sure?
so-called Ukrainian Canadians in my life.
Yeah, there's a lot here.
You know what? But I don't like them. And I'll tell you why. Because they gave us multiculturalism, official multiculturalism in Canada. You can look it up. They were just like butthurt that when they came from Galicia in Austria, like 100 years ago, that the Canadians thought they were kind of like lowbrow, right? And what they were told was speak English, etc., etc. So like 100 years ago, they decide, oh yeah, we're gonna have official multiculturalism. It's like, fuck you. Okay. Okay, so you're fucking butthurt that people made fun of you for not speaking English correctly. Okay. Well, that is the fate of every immigrant. All right.
Well, it's
So
like
why
all
are
the
you
Asian-
so special?
It's all the Asian Americans complaining that people can't pronounce their Asian names. It's like, well, correct.
That's how you say it in English.
Yeah, I mean, in English we say, it's like we don't learn how to pronounce Korean or Chinese words.
No.
Yeah, but let me give an example. Wendy Dung. Well,
Yeah.
you look at how her name is spelled, and
Rupert Murdoch's
well,
wife.
it's Wendy Dung, right? No, but it's spelled Wendy Dung.
Well, in
And this
Chinese, you
pinyin,
would pronounce
this
that dumb.
pinyin,
Yeah.
it's just like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. This is an alphabet which is completely alien to our own. So why don't we have a transliteration that makes it right? Okay. No, we have Wendy Dung, which is actually Wendy Dung. Just shut up. Okay.
What is her
This is
last
so
name?
stupid. Her name is
DENG.
D-E-N-G?
her name is DENG in
that's
Latin
the proper,
alphabet.
That's the proper
it's
Chinese
pronounced
transliteration.
Dung. Like shit,
Dung.
right?
Right.
No, well, that's pinyin. Yeah, that's how they do it. Well, it's like how, the X, like President, Chairman Xi, right? English speakers have a lot of trouble. Trump called him Chairman XI. But,
Really?
It's fantastic.
No, I see a totally old man here when, okay, so now we have a different version of Chinese into English, and why doesn't it sound anything like English? Okay, you have failed.
Well,
You have
so we can bring this
seriously
back to
failed.
we can bring this back to the sudden switch of pronouncing Kiev as Kiev.
Kiev.
Lifetime.
Kiev.
I've never known it as anything other than Kiev, and then suddenly, like around January, everybody started saying Kiev.
Why?
I don't know.
What
Well, I think
you
it's a
want to hear,
political
Mike?
gesture.
You want to hear
That's
me on this?
Ukrainian. Go.
Okay.
Let's say we don't say Paris,
Right.
we say Paris, right? We
That's
don't
right.
say Cologne, we say Cologne, right? We
Mhm.
don't say München, we say Munich,
Yeah.
right? We don't say Praha, we say Prague,
Prague.
right? I could go. Oh no, here's my favorite.
I'll say
We
Prague.
don't say Moskva, which is what the Russians
Yeah.
say.
Right.
We say Moscow,
Moscow, yeah.
right?
Well, do you think? How do you think they call China in China?
China.
It's 中国.
Hmm.
All right. English speakers don't know how to pronounce that, and Chinese people certainly do not say China.
No.
They say 中国. But we have English words for different places for a reason.
Yeah. Well, a lot
Just
of
like Chinese have Chinese words.
Chinese
for other
words
places.
for other places.
Yeah, New York is 纽约.
Yeah.
We don't demand that they say New York in China.
Yeah.
Why
Exactly.
should we? This is hilarious to me.
Yeah, it is
Oh,
funny.
we have to when Mumbai. Oh, Mumbai. What really? Mumbai?
Yeah, it's
No one's
Bombay.
called it Mumbai before. It was called Bombay, and everyone understood it was called Bombay. Okay.
You know what?
Yeah.
This is bringing something to my mind is the amount of people that try to police the things that I say. So for example, I was hooking up with this woman from mainland China, and I was talking to a coworker. I'm like, well, she's very Oriental looking, and a woman comes in. She says, don't call them Oriental. I'm like, this gets better. I go, excuse me. And she goes, you can't call them Oriental. I go, I dated a half Chinese, half Cambodian woman for 4.5 years. She looks Oriental, okay? And you can't say that. So now, as she's telling me, as she's policing my words, I decide to call the Chinese girl, and I put her on speakerphone, and I go, are you Oriental? She goes, of course I am. What are you talking about? Well, I'm being told that you're not Oriental. And she goes, are you fucking stupid? I go, of course I'm Oriental. I'm Chinese. And I go, well, my coworker says I'm not allowed to call you Oriental. And then the Chinese woman goes, she sounds like a greenhorn.
What does that mean, a greenhorn?
A naive, ignorant
Well, I
person.
know what a greenhorn means generally, but in this context, what does it mean?
She greenhorn. That's what she called it.
Okay.
And I've been experiencing that when going on dates with women, where they're constantly trying to police my actions and words. And when usually when it turns into a dumpster fire and I know I'm not going to get laid, I tell these women, you can police my words when you start blowing me or when I stick in your ass.
Oh no, that's too specific. Okay?
I know, but
This is
usually
a penis.
Too specific. Okay.
Right, but again, it's usually when women start acting these manners, they're so sensitive.
Hey man,
Culture
do you have a crucifix behind you on this set?
I do actually. I do.
Maybe you shouldn't talk about what you're talking about now.
Hey, did you know, Kevin, did you know this a little bit of trivia, that before the crucifix was a popular form of torture and death in the Roman Empire,
Mhm.
I'm going to say about 400 to 500 years prior, the preferred form of execution.
Kevin, what's your take on this, as you dub it, the purple mafia that seems to dominate the Catholic Church and
and basically just again, I just want your take.
A friend of mine told me like a week ago that the Athanasian heresy in the church was longer than the one that we have seen since the Second Vatican Council. And I thought, all right, I suppose I'm gonna have to look at this. When I was a child, I grew up in the Catholic Church, which has completely disappeared now, okay? Let me give you an example. I was put through Catholic school through my parents, which was like expensive. And then they stopped sending me, so I went through, public schools. So about 6 years later, circa 1970, there was a Catholic church that was near where I lived in East Vancouver. And I went through and I thought, what? Is this the Mass? I don't get it. Nothing seems the same at all. I thought for many years that there would be a definitive answer to the question of the war within the Catholic Church. But apparently there's not going to be one, except that this faker, this Jesuit heretic, is going to be the head of the Catholic Church. And I wonder, I really wonder, I don't mean to be depressing him. I wonder how much God expects from us. I really do. Because his church has been taken over.
Well,
heretics.
It's
heretics.
It's my opinion that
By
all
heretics.
religions
And
have been
how
have
much,
suffer from that.
how much are we expect to feel? How much? Sorry for interrupting.
It's quite all right. I just started going back to church a little bit before COVID happened, and I've been a Knights of Columbus member for the past 10 years, and I'm trying my best to get more involved. I volunteer, and I'm trying to do, again, I'm trying to be more religious. But when I hear about donating to the Ukraine and I hear about, some of the things that Pope Francis has to say, it's really disheartening, and it makes me quite frustrated. And I'm like, what is this all for? It's as if they're pushing me away. I mean, I remember when COVID happened, and they finally lifted the mask mandates, and my church called me saying, oh, do you plan on coming back to mass? And I'm like, are you still a church?
Yeah.
I can't receive the Eucharist through a live stream. I'm sorry, Father.
You gotta try to find a community within it, because you're not. I mean, there might be some good churches out there that are, that really are God-centered. I don't know, because I don't follow that religious path. But I know a lot of Catholics. Like I said, my family, a lot of my father's family's Catholic. You kind of have to find a community within that. You're not going to be able to rely on the church itself.
Okay, all right, but here's my problem. You know what? Do you know who those people are? They're called Hispanics, and I don't speak their language.
They're all fucking Spanish, man. You got to learn some Spanish, man.
And it's mostly, like with Knights of Columbus, everyone is kind of like 60 years or older. I'm the youngest by at least 30 years. And I tried talking to I got this one Puerto Rican guy who's a little bit close to my age, and I'm trying to tell him, I go, listen, you got to get out there and figure out a way to recruit some, El Salvadorians, some Mexicans to try to get into the fold. And he's Puerto Rican, so he's kind of like, it's a little bit similar to like the Italian thing where you got, 1 foot in the US, 1 foot out, kind of, where we kind of still hold our ethnic background. But it, again, try telling a 25-year-old girl to go to Catholic church. What do you think? Her religion is Instagram.
Yeah. No shit, man.
So anyway, listen, we've done over 2 hours, and I'm getting tired. I actually really enjoyed myself.
Me too.
You've done 3 hours, man.
Oh shit! Wow, holy fuck. Hey, listen,
Time flies.
Kevin, listen, I have an absolute splendid time talking to you for the first time. I know it's really rare for you to do shows outside of your own live stream. I really hope we can do this again. We'll definitely be tuning in. I know you got to meet Expat Aftermath, and you met I am Chris here.